Natalie was an extremely beautiful and understanding young lady. From a young age, she had to live with her stepmother and stepsister, Fiona. Right from their first meeting, her stepmother had completely won her over. It seemed as though Natalie would have the complete family she always longed for, but unexpectedly, she was harmed by her stepmother and Fiona. They arranged for her to marry a man named Ryan. Natalie's tragedy began here. After getting married, Natalie discovered that Ryan was a lecherous and greedy man. As soon as she suggested a divorce, Ryan murdered her mercilessly. It seemed as though everything had ended tragically, but by some miracle, Natalie was reborn and returned to the time before everything happened. Now, Natalie was back and more formidable than before. She was determined to capture the heart of Eli, the young master whom Fiona was deeply infatuated with. Unfortunately, due to a series of incidents, she had to confess her feelings to Charles, the most notoriously difficult man in the Empire. Would her life in this new life blossom? Or would it fall into another deadlock? Let's follow along to await the results. In a magnificent and splendid hall, Duke Charles solemnly announced extremely important news to those present. Today, I want to announce some good news. I want to propose to Miss Natalie. Natalie stared at Charles with a rather surprised expression. The man with the strongest ice magic in the Empire, the youngest Duke, Charles Bennox, is proposing to me? Her stepmother also couldn't believe what she had just heard. How is this possible? Fiona's heart skipped a beat. Impossible. She muttered to herself, how could it be that wench? The one who marries him should be me. Hoping to change Charles's mind, Fiona stubbornly approached him and asked. Your Grace, did you mistake the name? I am Fiona. You meant Fiona, right? Thinking she could sway Charles's heart, Fiona was met with an extremely cold reply, Miss Fiona, please have some self-respect. Hearing this, she could only withdraw her hand in pain. Charles began walking towards Natalie and reaffirmed, the person I like is Miss Natalie. The person I want to marry is also Miss Natalie. I hope you won't say or do anything that could be misunderstood. Natalie sadly expressed her feelings to Fiona, I'm sorry, Fiona, my dear sister. I know you've always liked the Duke and hoped to become the Duchess. But feelings cannot be forced. I can't control my own feelings, so I can't give the Duke to you. On the surface, Natalie pretended to be sweet and gentle, but inside, she was extremely gleeful seeing Fiona's utter despair. Looking at their horrified expressions is truly delightful. Next, I will make you even more despairing. Don't even dream of escaping, not one of you. Months earlier, on a beautiful day at the mansion, Natalie was admiring her devastatingly beautiful reflection in the mirror. This face is still all right, not disfigured. Bella suddenly entered and announced, Miss, Master Ryan has arrived. Natalie pondered something that seemed quite mysterious. Master Ryan, now there's still time. She turned and smiled at Bella, all right. In her heart, Natalie also felt relieved that Bella was still alive, not beaten to death for protecting her. More importantly, Natalie had been reborn a year before everything happened. She sat and talked with Ryan and Fiona. When he took out a small gift, Fiona gasped, oh my God. Is this jewelry from the House of Caroline? Master Ryan is so good to you, sister. Ryan held the jewelry box and said sincerely, I just felt this hairpin was suitable for Miss Natalie, so I bought it. Natalie said nothing, only smiled meaningfully. Looking at the cheerful atmosphere, could he have guessed? Fiona, sitting next to them, excitedly said, Sister, try it on. Natalie suddenly recalled unpleasant memories from her past life. In my previous life, all my suffering was because of these two. I am the only child of Count Chu. My mother passed away when I was 2. For many years, my father took great care of me, but he was very busy, and often I was alone, reading. So my father felt guilty towards me, saying he couldn't give me a beautiful childhood. Then, when I was 9, my father brought my stepmother to the Count's mansion. My stepmother had a daughter about my age. Her father chuckled and said, Natalie, now you have a friend. The stepmother unexpectedly approached and gently stroked her head. Natalie, from now on, I will be your mother. Natalie had a good impression of her from the first meeting. A gentle and wise stepmother. Since I was young, I longed for a mother's love, so I quickly accepted this gentle stepmother. After I grew up, my stepmother introduced me to Ryan. Ryan Constantine, the second son of Count Constantine. Handsome, gentlemanly appearance. Moreover, he understood my preferences very well. I thought I had found my destined prince. But this false beauty shattered after marriage. Less than 2 months after the wedding, my father suddenly passed away. Very quickly, Ryan began to reveal his true lecherous face. Natalie witnessed the scoundrel embracing his new mistress. Having experienced many unacceptable things, she asked Ryan for a divorce. However, he wouldn't let her go so easily. Divorce? You're dreaming. If I divorce you, where will I get money? I'm the Count's son-in-law now. He became frantic, yelling, I'll teach you a lesson you'll never forget. The wine bottle and glass began to crash to the floor. Like a man who had lost control, Ryan pinned Natalie to the ground and repeatedly assaulted her without mercy. Once, when I mentioned divorce, he hit me with a wine bottle, killing me. Ryan hurled insults at her. You still want to divorce me? I'll let you leave this world, you bitch. Just you 2 women, and you dared to trick me. Natalie could only clench her fists in helplessness. It was then that I realized that Ryan approaching me was the stepmother and stepsister's idea. The purpose was to prevent me from meeting the person my father had chosen for me. And my father was harmed by my stepmother. Now is the time when Ryan, bribed by Fiona and her mother, pursued me. This hairpin must have been bought by Fiona according to her own taste, and then given to Ryan to win my favor. Natalie feigned a compliment. It's beautiful. I really like it. Thank you, Master Ryan. However, I don't have matching earrings and a necklace. It would be nice if I could wear a complete set of jewelry to the Marchioness's banquet. It turned out that she had already planned how to confront them. If that's the case, then I want more. You agree, right? Faced with Natalie's unexpected request, Ryan panicked. Fiona, sitting next to him, immediately came to the rescue. I also think it would look better on you as a complete set, sister. What do you think, Master Ryan? He echoed her sentiment. Right. That was my oversight. I will definitely make sure Miss Natalie wears the complete set of jewelry before the banquet. Natalie put on an excited expression and asked, Really? Thank you, Master Ryan. He gave a forced smile and replied, Don't mention it. As long as Miss Natalie is happy. Inside Natalie's private room, her maid Bella said, Miss Fiona's maid bought the jewelry from the house of Caroline and then secretly gave it to Master Ryan's servant. Natalie wasn't surprised at all. She calmly continued reading and thought to herself, just as I guessed. A few seconds later, she said to Bella, All right, I understand. Bella asked in surprise, Miss Fiona, why would she do that? Natalie calmly replied, Why? Naturally, it's because of everything in the Count's mansion. Natalie made up her mind. In my previous life, I was foolish, but being reborn, I absolutely won't give them a chance to harm me and my father. The next day, Bella continued to inform Natalie of the situation so she could stay informed. Miss, I found out that Master Eli will be attending the masked ball birthday party, hosted by Her Highness Grand Duchess Angelila. Natalie nodded and asked, Did our family receive an invitation? Bella quickly replied, Yes, but ever since you turned 16 and entered society, Madame always claims to be unwell whenever there's a banquet like this. She also insists on staying home to take care of Madame. So, previously, it was always Miss Fiona who attended with the Count. Bella then seriously warned Natalie, This time, don't be fooled by Madame. How could it be such a coincidence every time? Natalie looked ahead with an unfocused gaze and said to Bella, It won't happen again. In my previous life, you also reminded me, but I craved maternal love too much. And my stepmother acted so well that I didn't suspect her. Bella whispered, By the way, Miss, why did you ask me to inquire about Master Eli? Natalie smiled meaningfully and replied, Because I want to steal Eli from Fiona. Bella gasped in astonishment. Huh? Natalie was gradually becoming a stronger young woman. From now on, my things won't be given to Fiona anymore. And the things she wants, I will take them all. Fiona always wanted to use our Count's mansion to marry the young master of the Duke's house, Eli. But I absolutely won't let her have her way. In this life, she can obediently marry that scoundrel Ryan. Bella jumped for joy. That's great, Miss. You finally see through those two. Natalie then instructed her, You go tell Madame that my grandmother sent a letter asking me to visit her for 2 days. Bella quickly complied. Yes. That way, Madam won't dare feign illness to keep you home to serve her. Natalie sat in silence, pondering. At this time, I'm busy asking my father to help His Majesty receive guests, so I don't want him to worry about my affairs. For the time being, I don't want to play the mother-daughter drama with her, so avoiding her is best. In my previous life, I trusted her so much, loved her. And she schemed to bring me to such a tragic end. Now, if I see her face, I'm afraid I won't be able to resist tearing her apart. 3 days later, the day of the banquet arrived. The national goddess of the Sarah continent, including the main goddess of light of the Hazel Empire. However, for hundreds of years, the internal power struggles within the church had been ceaseless, leading to a decline in the church's influence, gradually turning it into a tool of power in the hands of the royal family, relying on the royal family's existence. Therefore, the aristocratic banquet celebrating the birthday of the goddess of light was not managed by the church, but single-handedly organized by the royal family. Inside the banquet hall, Miss Cariston took the initiative to greet Eli. "Master Eli, long time no see." He greeted her warmly. "Hello, Miss Cariston." Natalie stood behind, extremely nervous. "Eli, the most beloved young master of the Bennox dukedom. According to the information I've gathered, he has a cheerful and enthusiastic personality. Easy to approach. Although he's easygoing, he has never done anything excessive. But how do I approach him without being too obvious? However, for now, my goal is to prevent Fiona from marrying Eli as she wishes. Actually, I just need to ruin Eli's impression of Fiona. I don't need to get myself involved. It's just perfect that Fiona has been schemed against and can't come to the banquet. I want this to be the best thing that happens today." With her intelligence, Natalie quickly thought of a way. "I've got it. I'll use Fiona's identity to confess to Eli. When he rejects me, I'll pretend to go crazy and do something impolite. Based on his personality, he won't hold it against me, but Fiona's name will definitely be on his blacklist after this." Just thinking about it made Natalie incredibly excited. Upstairs, Grand Duchess Angelila was talking with Charles. "Your nephew is truly outstanding. Worthy of being the most popular young master in the empire. I wonder which young lady keeps looking at him." Hearing Angelila say this, Charles also curiously looked down below. Among the dozens of guests, there was a young lady standing in the back, staring at Eli without approaching him. That person was none other than Natalie. She had caught Charles's attention. Eli smiled and said to the young ladies, "Ladies, please excuse me." Natalie stood behind, carefully observing his every move. "He's leaving. My chance has come." Taking advantage of a passing waiter, Natalie went forward and grabbed a bottle of wine. Greeting him with wine should seem quite natural, right? After a few steps, she suddenly realized, why am I so nervous that I took the whole bottle? Never mind, with a mask on, no one will recognize me. Upstairs, Charles said goodbye to Angelila. "Your Highness, I'll excuse myself." She nodded and smiled. "All right, you may go." Natalie slowly approached Eli. "I should have worn a full face mask. I wonder if I'll be recognized like this. What should I do with this bottle of wine? I can't just ask him if he wants to drink with me." Suddenly, a hand appeared out of nowhere and grabbed Natalie's wrist. She turned around in alarm. Charles, with a murderous look, questioned Natalie. "What are you trying to do?" She tried to remain calm as she replied, "I'm not trying to do anything." However, inside, she couldn't shake off her fear. Could it be that he saw through my plan? Eli also turned around and asked, "Uncle, what's going on?" Natalie was even more shocked when she learned something new. "Uncle? Isn't this person Count Bennox?" Charles recounted the events. "This person was sneaking around with a bottle of wine, following you. I was afraid she would do something harmful to you." Natalie denied it. "I didn't." "That's crazy. Who would openly attack Master Eli in a place like this? The Duke, having such thoughts, is the dangerous one." Eli smiled kindly and said, "Uncle, please let her go first. I believe this young lady wouldn't do such a thing. Don't worry, can you explain this bottle of wine and why you were following me?" Natalie thought to herself, Master Eli is truly gentle with women. She panicked and answered his question. "Because I wanted to confess. I wanted to drink some wine for courage." Luckily, she was quick-witted enough to come up with such a perfect answer. If I said I was too nervous and took it by mistake, no one would believe me. Charles, standing next to them, demanded, to confirm that you are not an assassin, remove your mask. Natalie became flustered, put in a difficult position. What? Wouldn't everyone know that I confessed to Master Eli? She dared to ask back, can I refuse? I only dared to confess, because of this masked ball. Eli also spoke up for Natalie. Uncle, girls are easily embarrassed. Please don't make things difficult for her. Natalie felt 1,000 pounds lighter. Master Eli is such a gentleman. I can't cause trouble for him. On the contrary, Charles was not at all polite. No wonder he was simultaneously listed as the most charming and the most unapproachable man in the empire. He raised his voice at Natalie. Well? Natalie smiled, secretly devising another plan. If you force me like this, then don't blame me for dragging you down with me. She took a deep breath and slowly removed her mask. Natalie put on a serious expression and said to Charles, although it's difficult, I want to tell you, Duke Knox. I like you. Eli's eyes lit up with amusement. Uncle, so this young lady was confessing to you. Finally, a woman likes you. Charles glared at Eli, who didn't dare utter another word. After speaking, Natalie continued to act. I apologize if I was too presumptuous. I originally wanted to ask Master Eli to help me arrange a private meeting with your grace. You said I could say it and you wouldn't blame me, right? She thought to herself, seeing his displeased face makes me happy. Being a little reckless is actually quite fun. I was too reserved before, and it ended up harming me. In my previous life, I should have gone directly to my grandfather after discovering Ryan's true colors. And used his power to force a divorce. Charles glanced at Natalie with an indifferent expression and silently thought, crazy woman. Master Eli, wearing a mask, attended the banquet. He chatted cheerfully with Natalie. I don't know which house you're from, Mississippi. Have we met before? More notably. Charles Bennock stood beside him. She worried, and many thoughts raced through her mind. They don't know who I am. If I run away now, wouldn't anyone know that I confessed to Ben Knox? Eli vaguely remembered meeting her and exclaimed excitedly, I remember now. You're Natalie, right? Yes. Have we met before, Master Eli? She said cheerfully, but inside she was distraught. It seems I can't run away. I haven't appeared at any social gatherings since my 16th birthday party. Even if Master Eli met me then, he probably doesn't remember me now. Eli excitedly boasted, your father showed me your picture. Natalie lowered her head in embarrassment and worry. Why would my father? She stammered, unable to speak. Suddenly, she realized, no wonder Fiona wanted to collude with her mother to scheme and marry me off early. It turns out they had their eyes on the person my father chose for me. Eli sincerely placed his hand on his chest and softly said, yes, I am the person the Count chose for you. However, if the Count knew you liked my uncle, he probably wouldn't have chosen me. Eli gazed at Natalie without blinking. Ben Knox asked her privately, you didn't speak? No one told you to be mute, did they? She's Eli's prospective partner. Ben Knox's heart shattered. He asked her again, are you sure you like me? It's still not too late to back out. Natalie said, you don't need to feel awkward. I don't need you to accept. Inside, she was thinking, please, save me. This feels like an interrogation. Ben Knox said to both of them, if that's the case, let's pretend nothing happened. You don't have to worry about anyone else finding out, miss. He specifically told Eli, don't tell anyone about this when you get back. Eli scratched his head, flustered. He said, don't be afraid, Mississippi. My uncle is just not good at talking to girls, but he means no harm. Natalie replied, I won't. I don't mind. Eli playfully assured her, don't worry, I'll help you pursue my uncle. She immediately waved her hand at him. No need to bother, master. But Eli said, don't be so polite. This is something our whole family has been looking forward to. Actually, he was slyly thinking, it's not easy to find a girl who confesses to my uncle. I have to hurry back and tell my grandfather this good news. Then Eli bid farewell to Natalie. Well, I'll be going then. Wait for my good news, Mississippi, rest assured, leave this to me. Natalie was stunned, speechless at his enthusiasm. But in her heart, she just wanted to scream, I don't need your help. I don't want to pursue him. Then she thought sadly, Master Eli's personality is so enthusiastic that it's overwhelming. Oh well, I'll deal with it as it comes. By now, Fiona must have reached home, cursing and ranting. I wonder if she likes the gift I gave her. The scene shifted to a magnificent and luxurious palace. Fiona rushed in, sweating profusely, and called out to her mother. Seeing her daughter's state, her mother was startled and asked worriedly, "Goodness, darling. What's wrong? Shouldn't you be at the birthday banquet?" Fiona recounted. The carriage suddenly broke down. Her mother took her daughter's hand and said, "Oh dear. Are you hurt anywhere?" Fiona angrily replied, "I'm fine. It's just that I encountered a beggar who grabbed my food and stained my clothes. Damn commoner. I wanted to use this banquet to get close to Master Eli." Her mother comforted her daughter, "It's good that you're not hurt. Don't be angry. Let's go change your clothes. There will be plenty of opportunities to approach Master Eli." Fiona obeyed her mother and went to bathe, surrounded by 3 maids attending to her. One maid, despite being very gentle while combing Fiona's hair, due to her nervousness, hadn't yet pleased the young lady. Fiona, annoyed, glared at the maid. Seeing the young lady's gaze, the maid was terrified, sweating profusely, and stammered, "I apologize, miss." She knelt on the floor and pleaded, "I'm sorry, miss. Please forgive me." Fiona, with a fierce look, ordered, "You, come here." Fortunately, Fiona's mother arrived just in time. She cheerfully said to the maid, "Get up. It's not a big deal. The young lady won't do anything to you. She's not that harsh. All of you, leave now." Hearing Madam's words, the maids obeyed and left. Then, she personally combed Fiona's hair and advised her, "You still can't stay calm. It's just a maid. If she displeases you, dismiss her. But if her actions damage your reputation, it will be troublesome." Fiona was still furious. "But I was so unlucky today. If I don't vent my anger, I won't feel comfortable." Her mother calmly advised her daughter, "Bear with it. If word gets out that you're harsh to the maids, it will affect your reputation. To marry into the Bennox dukedom, you can't afford any negative impact. My precious daughter will definitely marry into the duke's house." Suddenly, an announcement came, "Madam, the eldest young lady has returned." Madam and Fiona quickly went out to receive her. Madam feigned gentleness and said, "Natalie, you're back." Then she was stunned by the men in black accompanying her. "Who are these people?" Natalie explained, "They are my grandfather's men. I really like this pastry chef's desserts, so I brought her back. These guards are here because my grandfather was worried about my safety. So he sent them to protect me." Fiona's mother chuckled and said, "You silly girl. What danger could there be in the house?" Natalie smiled and said, "Yes, I said the same thing, but my grandfather wasn't at ease. Actually, she was taking precautions. Just in case those 2 backstabbers have any malicious intentions." Suddenly, her father returned home and asked in surprise, "Why are you all standing here?" Natalie called out to her father. Then, with tears in her eyes, she said, "Father, you're still healthy." Seeing her like this, her father immediately became anxious. "Oh my, why are you crying? Who bullied my precious daughter?" Fiona's mother also feigned concern and said, "Goodness, Natalie. What's wrong?" Her father asked repeatedly, "Why are you crying? Were you bullied? Who bullied you? Tell me, and I will not spare them." Natalie felt a pang of sadness in her heart. Although she really wanted to expose that wicked mother and daughter to her father, that woman was still his stepmother. Without concrete evidence, if she spoke out, it would likely put her father in a difficult position. Her stepmother smiled kindly and urged, "Tell your father who bullied you. He definitely won't let them off the hook." In her heart, she was venomous. This damn girl. Why is she crying all of a sudden? Don't let anyone think that I bullied her. Then Natalie hugged her father tightly and said, "No, it's not that. I just missed you so much. It's so good to still be able to hug you and act spoiled like this." Her father gently stroked her head and said to Natalie, "Silly child, you're crying like a little kitten. You're just missing me? Crying like this after just a few days apart? It seems like I'll have to take this little kitten with me wherever I go from now on." Natalie rested her head on her father's shoulder, thinking, "It's not just a few days, but 107 days. From my previous life, it's been over 3 months since you were harmed. Natalie regained her cheerful demeanor and said to her father, "All right, then. Wherever you go, I'll follow." She secretly resolved, "This time, I won't let anyone hurt you again." Her father happily nodded. "All right. Did you have fun at your grandfather's these past few days? How is your grandfather's health?" Natalie replied, "Grandfather is in good health. I had a lot of fun, but I missed you. Oh, and I brought some people back from grandfather's place. A pastry chef who makes delicious cakes, and a few guards that grandfather wanted me to bring back for my protection." Her father said, "It seems the pastry chef's skills are excellent to have pleased our Natalie so much." He instructed them, "Serve the young lady well, and your treatment won't be any less than at my marquisate." The stepmother then added, "The count cares for young lady Natalie the most. You must serve the young lady well." Natalie suggested, "Father, why don't you try her skills now?" Seeing the closeness between the father and daughter, Fiona couldn't help but feel jealous. She thought wickedly, if only the count were my real father, or if Natalie disappeared. Would he treat me like his own daughter? The scene shifted to the Sun Palace. The sound of objects falling, large pieces of jewelry, emanated from the princess's room. The maid trembled, kneeling and kowtowing, while the princess cruelly asked, "You're saying someone at my aunt's banquet confessed to the duke?" The maid stammered, "Yes, your highness." The princess asked in a harsh tone, "Who was it?" The maid, even more frightened, replied, "It was the daughter of Count Carlyle." The princess was very surprised. "Oh? Just the daughter of a minor count, and she dares to set her sights on Charles?" Then she continued to scold the maid, "As if I need to tell you what to do." The next day, Natalie sat reading the newspaper, her heart filled with worry. She was concerned that last night's events might have offended Duke Bennox. So she had someone at the banquet associate her affections with him, but what was this? Her close maid asked worriedly, "Miss, what's wrong? You look pale. Are you feeling unwell?" Natalie handed her the document she was reading. "This document says that women who approach or like the Duke all meet tragic ends. Disfigurement. Rape. Or marriage to something inhuman. And I confessed to him last night." Hearing this, the maid was startled and dropped the documents. The maid's face turned deathly pale. "What should we do?" "Miss, are you in danger?" Suddenly, someone knocked on the door and announced, "The Bennox dukedom has sent an invitation." The maid panicked. "What? Miss? What should we do?" she urged Natalie. She worriedly asked, "Could the Duke be planning to harm you?" Natalie looked at her with a listless gaze, not knowing how to answer. The princess thought, "I'll go and see first. He's an intelligent man. If he wanted to make a move, he wouldn't choose the Duke's mansion." Natalie decided to go to the Bennox dukedom. She ran quickly to get to the bottom of everything. Standing at the mansion's gate, she reassured herself, "It's okay, Natalie. You'll be fine." Charles Bennox watched her from behind a window. He was curious. What is this woman doing here? In the drawing room, the maids buzzed, "Grandfather has arrived." Just then, Duke Eli rushed in. He said cheerfully, "Countess Carlyle has arrived." "Oh, quickly invite her in." At the same time, a group of maids from the Bennox palace warmly welcomed her. "Countess Carlyle, please follow me." The young lady agreed to follow them, thinking, as expected of the Duke's mansion, "I'm just a countess, and yet I have 2 maids escorting me." She stroked her chin thoughtfully. "But why did Duke Bennox invite me here? Such a formal invitation. It can't be just to make things difficult for me." The young lady's eyes widened when she saw the Duke. It turned out to be Duke Bennox, who had arrived, passing between 2 rows of maids. Everyone gazed at him admiringly. Bennox turned his attention to Natalie. The young lady wondered if he was waiting for her. "Greetings, Duke Bennox," he said coldly. "She's looking for me?" She froze. "Weren't you the one who invited me?" He asked the maid, "What's going on?" The maid, startled. She then said, "It was the old Duke who invited Countess Carlyle. The old Duke is waiting in the drawing room." Bennox's face darkened as he suppressed his anger. "That hateful Eli, he betrayed me as soon as I turned my back." Natalie, bewildered, lowered her head, not daring to look at him. She glanced up at him. It seemed Duke Eli had told the old Duke about her confession to Duke Bennox. Now that the old Duke knew of her existence, Duke Bennox probably wouldn't harm her. Though whether he was the one behind the previous attacks was still uncertain. Both of them remained silent. Duke Bennox turned around. Let's go, he said, startling Natalie. He walked ahead, aloofly saying, I'll take you there. Natalie felt embarrassed. I'm troubling your grace, Duke Bennox. They arrived to meet Bennox's father. Bennox announced, Father, I brought Countess Carlyle. She was taken aback. These were all Duke Bennox's family. Wasn't this a bit too formal? Duke Bennox's father stroked his beard. This boy is quite thoughtful, personally escorting her here. Natalie thought to herself, this is a wonderful misunderstanding. Natalie respectfully greeted, Greetings, old Duke. Duke Bennox's father praised her, what a good child. Don't be so formal, have a seat. Charles, you sit down too. Eli scratched his head sheepishly. Hello uncle. Natalie and Bennox stared at Eli. Eli's face was filled with remorse. And now, the situation had escalated to a family introduction. The Duke's father said, Good, you look well matched. Duke Bennox's relatives laughed cheerfully. Indeed, a perfect match. A talented man and a beautiful woman. Her would-be husband-in-law said, Now, father, you don't have to worry about Charles's marriage anymore. The family members introduced themselves one by one. I'm Charles's eldest brother. You can call me Big Brother like Charles does. She politely greeted him. A woman said, I'm his sister-in-law. Can I call you Natalie? The young countess cheerfully replied, As you wish. Caught off guard, the father asked, So, when are you two planning to get married? Charles spoke up, Father, there's nothing between us. Princess Natalie was surprised, not knowing how to interject. This was all too sudden. The father's face fell. He asked them to stop talking. The eldest brother spoke, Father, you're scaring Natalie. The sister-in-law added, That's right. Let the young people handle their own affairs. Why should you bother? He said, Countess Carlyle, don't feel pressured. I didn't mean to rush you too. I have no objections to whenever you decide to marry. But inwardly, he was frustrated. This old bachelor Charles finally had a good girl interested in him, and he hoped he hadn't scared her away. He said to his children, It's mainly because Charles is getting older, so I'm worried about his marriage. At that moment, the princess realized that the old Duke was very satisfied with her. Most importantly, Duke Bennox barely refuted the old Duke, seeming to value his opinion greatly. So, the old Duke would be a good shield against the tragic fate that other girls in intelligence had met. As for Charles Bennox, he lowered his head, looking sad and speechless. Natalie said sincerely, I understand your feelings, old Duke. I like Duke Bennox, and naturally, I hope for a good outcome with him. Please rest assured, I will definitely spend more time with Duke Bennox, so he'll come to like me soon. She knew that if she could please the old Duke, Charles wouldn't dare defy him and harm her. Please forgive any future transgressions. I hope I have the opportunity to understand Duke Bennox better. Charles Bennox glanced at her. Calling her a madwoman isn't wrong. Not only mad, but also a good pretender. During the meeting, the old Duke said cheerfully, Good, you two get along, spend more time together. I really like this child, Natalie. I hope she can become family soon. Natalie thanked the old Duke, Thank you for your affection, old Duke. Natalie also hopes to become part of your family. Because Natalie didn't want a tragic ending. Without the old Duke's protection, a small countess like Natalie couldn't confront a Duke. Charles turned to call his father. But on second thought, he stopped. Forget it, father wouldn't care about my thoughts. If I want to sever this connection, the key is the person beside me. Before Natalie left, the old Duke gave her a gift. Lady Natalie, this is a meeting gift for you. I hope you like it. Natalie saw that the gift box was quite expensive, so she politely declined. Thank you, old Duke, but this gift is too precious, I can't accept it. After hearing the old Duke say, a gift from an elder cannot be refused, you just need to say yes, Natalie accepted it. Seeing Natalie accept the gift, the old Duke was delighted. Come to the Duke's mansion when you have time, I'll tell Charles to take care of you. Yes, then I'll take my leave. I wish you good health. Charles said coldly, Let's go, I'll take you home. Natalie looked at Charles in surprise. He wanted to see her off again? To reassure Natalie, the old Duke added, This child is quite astute, only a little cold and distant. It might be hard for you later, having to live with someone like that. Natalie said shyly, Not at all. Eli joked, "Auntie, I offended my uncle this time to help you, you have to protect me later, okay?" Natalie smiled, "Young Master Eli, you're joking." Hearing Eli call her auntie, Natalie pondered, "Auntie. If I really marry Charles, I'll be a duchess. Then, my stepmother and Fiona won't have a chance to harm me and father anymore. But the condition is surviving this devil first." While escorting Natalie home, Charles stared at Natalie, making her slightly fearful. "What should I do? It feels like he's about to kill me." Suddenly, Charles spoke, making Natalie jump. "Countess Carlyle. Find an opportunity to tell my father that you already have someone you like." Natalie's eyes widened at Charles. "Huh? You can't like me. Tell my father you don't like me anymore." Hearing this, Natalie closed her eyes, thinking, as expected, Charles really dislikes being loved or approached by women. "But I'm sorry, I don't want to die at your hands, so I have to keep the old Duke as my backing." Natalie immediately said, "But I do like you. Why should I lie to the old Duke and say I like someone else?" Charles replied, "Didn't you say yesterday that you didn't need me to reciprocate? Why are you now pressuring my father into believing I like you?" Natalie explained, "That's because I used to think I wasn't worthy of you, so I said that. But today, I've decided to follow my heart. I like you, I want to be your wife. Of course, more importantly, I want to be the daughter-in-law that the old Duke is pleased with." Charles was taken aback. "Become my wife? I'm afraid you'll lose your life before achieving that." At this point, Natalie thought Charles was just threatening her. "Is he threatening me?" "He definitely is." Natalie froze. What do you mean?" "I mean, those who like me don't end well, so you'd better cut ties with me quickly." Natalie asked Charles, "So, if I cut ties now, will I be okay?" Natalie felt that if cutting ties now meant safety, she definitely wouldn't have risked becoming a duchess. Upon hearing Natalie's question, Charles fell unusually silent. Charles was thinking, the person in the palace probably knows about this by now. She's currently in danger. Natalie looked at Charles fearfully. He's silent. Even if I cut ties now, I'll still be targeted? Natalie decided to gamble. Since there's danger either way, I refuse. Finally arriving at Natalie's home, stepping out of the carriage, Natalie said to Charles, "In short, I like you. If you're not satisfied, tell the old Duke. You're a busy man, I won't invite you in. Be careful on your way." After saying that, Natalie turned and went inside. If he truly was the one who harmed those girls before, then now I can only remind him that the old Duke is very pleased with this daughter-in-law. I hope he'll give the old Duke face and not harm me. Charles watched Natalie. Fine, let it be. Having the Duke's protection is better than facing that person alone. As soon as Natalie returned, a maid rushed out. "Miss?" Natalie immediately asked, "What's wrong?" The maid whispered in Natalie's ear, "Young Master Ryan is here." Natalie clenched her fist. So annoying, what trouble is he causing now? As Natalie arrived at the drawing room, Ryan knelt down. "Lady Natalie, I've liked you for a long time. I hope you can accept my feelings." Natalie feigned surprise. "Oh my, is young Master Ryan confessing to me?" As expected, my stepmother, hearing that I was invited to Duke Benix's mansion, anxiously called this scum to cause trouble. Suddenly, Fiona and her mother appeared. Fiona pretended to be sincere. "Sister, I truly admire you. Young Master Ryan is so good to you. Look, to confess to you. He brought so many exquisite gifts, all things you like. This time I'll indulge them, give them a little hope, then slowly let them down." Natalie's stepmother said softly, "Natalie, young Master Ryan is the son of Count Constance, of noble birth and trustworthy character. You'll definitely be very happy if you marry him." Natalie looked at Ryan with affectionate eyes. "Actually, I admire young Master Ryan very much." Ryan replied happily, "So, you agree?" Natalie continued, "But father told me not to easily accept a man's proposal. I need to take some time to test his sincerity. Young Master Ryan, you surely understand my concerns, right?" Ryan stammered, Seeing Ryan speechless, his mother interjected, "Young Master Ryan, of course, understands and is willing to accept your test." Ryan nodded repeatedly, "Right, right. Natalie, any test is fine." Natalie shyly praised Ryan, "Young Master Ryan, you're so kind. To reciprocate your feelings, I'll accept your flowers and gifts." I hope you'll continue to try your best, don't disappoint me. Ryan immediately replied, I definitely won't give up. With the matter settled, Natalie took the flowers and gifts and walked towards her room. Then I'll excuse myself to rest. I look forward to our next meeting. Ryan and Fiona, both bewildered, watched Natalie leave. After Natalie left, Fiona and Ryan argued. Fiona angrily scolded, Why are you so stupid? I deliberately chose a time when father wasn't home for you to confess. Fearing he'd interfere. Who knew you'd give all the gifts without winning her over? Mother and I used our own money for those gifts. Ryan retorted, How could I know she'd suddenly change? She was so easy to coax before. Fiona's mother yelled, Enough, stop arguing. Natalie didn't completely refuse earlier. She's loved reading since she was a child. Find some precious antique books to give her, it'll definitely be twice as effective. They didn't know that Natalie hadn't gone to her room. Natalie had heard everything they said. At the bookstore, the place was quite noisy and bustling with many people coming and going. Natalie linked arms with her father and said, Father, thank you for accompanying me to buy books. Natalie brought her father here with a purpose. Today, Fiona sent her maid to buy books here. Natalie wanted her father to see Fiona meeting with Ryan, and then use her father to push Fiona and Ryan together. Suddenly, Natalie saw a rather interesting book. As Natalie reached for it, someone took it before her. Natalie turned to look. And saw Charles. Keep the change, the staff member said cheerfully, Thank you for your patronage. Natalie didn't expect to meet Charles here. It seemed she'd have to put on another act. Natalie and her father walked over to where Charles was paying. Good afternoon, Your Grace. Charles immediately said, This place isn't suitable for you. Return quickly. Charles was worried about Natalie being in such a crowded place without an escort. It was a perfect opportunity for that person to strike. Natalie smiled. After parting yesterday, I missed Your Grace dearly. Now that we've met by chance, how could I bear to leave so easily? Moreover, I'm very interested in the book in Your Grace's hands. I'd love to read it with you. The way Natalie spoke made Charles think, is Natalie addicted to acting? Charles said to Count Carlyle, You must have heard the rumors about me. If you don't want your daughter to be in danger, take her home quickly. Thank you, Your Grace, for your concern. Then, Count Carlyle wiped his sweat with a handkerchief. Indeed, I must keep Natalie away from this gentleman. I heard Natalie confess to him at the Christmas Eve banquet. I had nightmares for several nights. We'll leave immediately. Natalie looked at the book, her eyes sparkling. I apologize, Your Grace, for my rudeness. I won't bother you any longer. However, I really like this book. After receiving permission from the old Duke, I'll borrow it from you. With Natalie's way of speaking, Charles felt that she was truly opportunistic. Her relentless pursuit will only provoke that person further. I'm not sure if I can protect her from them anymore. Natalie had to excuse herself. Please, Your Grace, make yourself comfortable. We'll take our leave now. Leaving the bookstore, Natalie deliberately led her father down a shortcut so they could see Fiona's maid and Ryan meet. Father, let's take this way back. I heard there's a shortcut. He readily agreed, All right, I'll listen to you. Passing by a wall, Count Carlyle overheard, This is the book Miss Fiona asked me to buy for you. Ryan took the book. Don't worry. I definitely won't disappoint Miss Fiona this time. Count Carlyle stopped, whispering to Natalie, Isn't that Fiona's maid? Why is she buying books for young Master Ryan? Natalie replied, Maybe my sister likes young Master Ryan. So she specifically asked Daisy to buy these books for him. Natalie pulled her father's hand. Let's leave quickly. It'll be awkward if they see us. Father, you must find a way to bring them together. I want my sister to be happy. All right, we'll think of something when we get home. As Natalie and Count Carlyle were chatting happily, a man in black appeared and brushed past Natalie. The man in black drew a knife, aiming to harm Natalie. Someone pulled Natalie's hand back. Natalie exclaimed, Your Grace. Why are you here? Seeing Charles use ice magic to attack the man in black, Natalie admired Charles's abilities. Such powerful ice magic. No wonder he could surpass his two older brothers and inherit the title. Count Carlyle anxiously asked his daughter, Natalie, are you all right? Natalie immediately replied, Father, I'm fine. A servant rushed over. Forgive me, Lady Natalie. We failed to protect you properly and couldn't stop the assassin in time. Natalie shook her head. It's all right. Fortunately, His Grace saved me. Natalie was a little puzzled. Now that I think about it, why did he save me? Could there be a hidden reason behind those scary rumors about him? Natalie stepped forward to thank Charles. Thank you just now, Your Grace. Are you injured? Charles, with a stern expression, looked directly at Natalie. Instead of worrying about me, worry about yourself. Since you can't even protect yourself, I advise you to stop presuming you have the right to approach me. Natalie felt annoyed by Charles's words, but then thought, if Charles hadn't saved me just now, I might have been seriously hurt. So, she ignored his words and acted cute in front of him. But you're here, Your Grace. I'm sure that someone as strong as you can protect me well. Charles ordered his subordinate, take him down and interrogate him thoroughly. Thank you, Your Grace, for saving my daughter. But that assassin. To ease Count Carlyle's worries, Charles said, don't worry, Count. Leave this matter to me. Natalie and Count Carlyle thanked Charles once again. We'll trouble Your Grace then. Thank you, Your Grace. Suddenly, Natalie heard footsteps. She looked up. It was Princess Elia. What a coincidence. I just left the palace to buy some books and unexpectedly ran into you. It seems we're fated, aren't we, Charles? Seeing Princess Elia's affectionate gaze towards Charles, Natalie thought, does Princess Elia like Charles? Princess Elia turned and asked shyly, isn't this Count Carlyle? And the person next to you is? Count Carlyle replied, Your Highness, this is my daughter, Natalie. Natalie gently curtsied. Good afternoon, Princess Elia. Princess Elia smiled kindly. No need for formalities. I just saw some commotion here and unexpectedly witnessed an assassination attempt in broad daylight. It was quite dangerous just now. Fortunately, Charles acted in time, otherwise, Lady Countess might have been injured. Charles spoke up, protecting the citizens is my duty. Princess Elia asked Natalie, were you very frightened, Lady Countess? Natalie replied, thank you for your concern, Your Highness. I'm fine. Princess Elia reminded Natalie, such incidents are truly terrifying. You must be more careful. If something happens to you, Count Carlyle will be heartbroken. Natalie wasn't sure if she was mistaken, but she felt a sense of malice from Princess Elia. Putting that feeling aside for now, Natalie politely said, thank you for your concern, Your Highness. Charles, to avoid further angering Princess Elia, clarified his lack of feelings for Natalie. Stepping forward, he said clearly, Your Highness, although Natalie and I have no romantic feelings. She is the one my father has chosen as the future mistress of the Duke's mansion. Her safety is the responsibility of the Duke's mansion. Anyone who dares to harm her is opposing the Duke's mansion. He used the name of the Duke's mansion as both a subtle and firm warning, hoping it would restrain Princess Elia. My father is highly regarded by His Majesty. The consequences of confronting the Duke's mansion, even Grand Duke Angela must carefully consider. Princess Elia chuckled. Really? When did the old Duke choose her as his daughter-in-law? Charles didn't want to answer Princess Elia's question and declined. That's none of Your Highness's concern. I still need to escort them home. Please excuse us. All right, I won't hold you back any longer. Natalie sighed. Charles clearly doesn't want me interacting with Her Highness. Why is that? As soon as they left, Princess Elia flew into a rage. That damned woman, daring to use such despicable tricks to compete with me for Charles. I'll tear her to shreds. Your Highness, please calm down. The old Duke is not someone to be trifled with. Princess Elia instructed her maid, you absolutely cannot let her near Charles again. If you fail this time, don't come back. On the way back to Count Carlyle's residence, he said to Natalie, it was truly dangerous today. What would I do if something happened to you? Looking back, the rumors about Charles are probably true. Don't approach him anymore. Natalie immediately said, Father, don't worry. Think about it, if His Grace was truly as the rumors say, why would he save me today? Wouldn't it have been in his interest to let the assassin harm me? Count Carlyle fell silent. Seeing the logic in Natalie's words, Natalie continued, moreover, he personally escorted us back to ensure my safety. I feel that he's not that kind of person. If I'm not mistaken, Elia is the one behind this. Elia is infatuated with Charles. She won't allow any other woman to like or approach him, otherwise, they'll meet a tragic end. She did all this just to monopolize him. Finally arriving, the carriage wheels screeched to a halt. Natalie and Count Carlyle quickly alighted. "Thank you, Your Grace, for escorting us back." Charles had a few words for Natalie. "Natalie Callie-less, if you don't distance yourself from me, incidents like today will happen again. I advise you to reconsider my previous proposal. As long as you agree, I guarantee you won't be in danger like today again. Thank you for your concern, but currently, the person targeting me is Princess Elia. My feelings for you are far greater than my fear of danger. She set her sights on me and won't give up easily. So, instead of trusting your promise, I have more faith in the support of the entire Duke's family. So, Your Grace, please don't advise me any further. My feelings for you will never change. My backing is the old Duke. Someone who loves his son like me is the daughter-in-law he approves of. Without the old Duke's favor, how will I face Princess Elia's schemes?" Charles was exasperated by Natalie's stubbornness. "If you insist on being this stubborn, then be careful when you go out next time. I won't always be there to save you like today. Are you truly concerned about my safety?" "I'm so touched." Natalie thought, "Do you really need to remind me about these things? I'll rearrange my security detail as soon as I get back. Having lived once, I won't let myself die mysteriously like before." Charles had nothing more to say to Natalie. This woman was truly stubborn. He yanked the reins and left. Natalie and Count Carlyle watched him go. "Farewell, Your Grace." At that moment, in the Count's mansion, Fiona and her mother were eavesdropping. Fiona asked, "Mother, did you hear what they said?" Her mother replied, "Not clearly. But the fact that Duke Bennox personally escorted Natalie home suggests their relationship is unusual." Fiona seethed, "Damn it. She's only fit for someone like Ryan. How can she be worthy of the Duke? Mother, we must quickly break them up." Suddenly, her mother had an idea. "Go say some nice things about Ryan in front of Natalie, so Ryan will send those books soon. Natalie is so kind to the point of foolishness. She'll definitely be swayed by this." In the drawing room of the villa, Fiona rushed in. "Natalie. Oh my, I heard you and father were attacked outside. It scared me to death. Are you all right? Are you hurt anywhere?" "I'm completely unharmed. Duke Bennox protected me very well." Hearing this, Fiona froze for a few seconds. "It's good that you're not hurt. Mother and I can rest easy." "Oh, right, Ryan also heard about the attack and is very worried. He wants to visit you." Natalie looked at Fiona. "Certainly, I'm always happy to welcome Ryan." Fiona immediately replied, "That's wonderful. I'll immediately tell Daisy to inform him." Natalie knew Fiona's plan. Asking to meet me so quickly must be to give me the books. Well, I'm happy to receive him. After all, I'm looking forward to the show. Hearing that Natalie wanted to see him, Ryan hurried over immediately. The maid announced, "Young Master Ryan has arrived." Upon entering, Ryan politely said, "Good evening, Count Carlyle." Count Carlyle invited Ryan to sit. "Don't be so formal, please have a seat." Ryan thanked Count Carlyle and sat down, placing the book gently on the table. "Count, I came today actually too." Before Ryan could finish, Natalie interrupted, "Young Master Ryan, you don't need to say any more. Father and I both know what you mean." Ryan was overjoyed. "You and the Count both know?" He thought, "This is great. If the Count agrees, the marriage will be settled soon." "Yes, Father and I are aware of the feelings between you and Fiona. We're preparing to expedite your marriage." Count Carlyle continued Natalie's words, "Indeed. Natalie even asked me to prepare a generous dowry for Fiona, and I've agreed." Ryan's hands clenched in astonishment. "A generous dowry? I never thought Fiona, just a stepdaughter, would be worth so much." Fiona and her mother exclaimed, "What?" Fiona stood up to explain. "Father, you've misunderstood. I have no feelings for young Master Ryan." Fiona's mother added, "That's right, dear. There must be a misunderstanding. You don't need to hide it anymore, little sister. Father and I saw Daisy bringing books to Ryan, surely under your instructions. I think you misunderstood the relationship between Ryan and me, so you hid your feelings. I truly care for you, you don't need to yourself like this." Fiona raised her voice at Natalie. No, Fiona's mother quickly pulled her back. Don't say any more. The Count knows about the books. If you argue further, our plan to use Ryan to get close to Natalie will be exposed. Ryan sat down resentfully. I'm not wronged. Fiona's mother thought to stall for time and figure out a solution later. She turned to Count Carlyle with a strained smile. Dear, even if Fiona has feelings for Ryan, marriage is a big decision and requires careful consideration. Count Carlyle chuckled. That's only natural. Natalie said, Mother, rest assured. Fiona and I are both father's treasures. He'll definitely be cautious. This is just the beginning, Fiona. Prepare yourself for a hopeless marriage. At Charles's villa, someone reported, Your Grace, I've discovered that Ryan, the second son of Count Constance, is pursuing Lady Natalie. Hearing this, Charles stopped writing. Investigate Ryan's background thoroughly. If there's no problem, he's quite suitable for Natalie. Matching them up might help keep Natalie away from me. Meanwhile, at Princess Elia's villa, her maid rushed in to report. Your Highness, Ryan, the second son of Count Constance, is indeed pursuing Natalie. As soon as Duke Bennox discovered this, he immediately sent someone secretly to Locke County, Count Constance's territory, to investigate Ryan. Princess Elia gripped the glass on the table. Charles personally investigated Ryan? Could he really have fallen for Natalie? Princess Elia ordered her maid, regardless of what Ryan is really like, what Charles learns about him must be positive. Understand? The maid immediately left to make the necessary arrangements. A bird flew to Charles's villa, landing on his hand. Charles took the letter attached to the bird's leg and opened it. Ryan Constance, although the second son and unable to inherit the title, has an honest and upright character and is deeply loved by Count Constance. He's likely to inherit a considerable portion of the family's assets. He's the ideal marriage candidate for many local noble ladies. An ideal marriage candidate? Then I should think of a way to quickly bring Natalie and him together. As Charles thought of Natalie, she arrived. Lady Natalie, this way, please. Natalie softly said, Duke, greetings. Charles thought this might be a good opportunity to bring her and Ryan together. He asked Natalie, Is there something you need from me? Natalie replied, I've come to borrow the book Military Fortress that you purchased recently. The Duchess Dowager has given her permission. All right, let Linda escort you to the study first. I'll be there shortly. Natalie didn't expect Charles to agree so readily. She thought even if she used the Duchess Dowager as an excuse, he would at least hesitate a bit. His attitude today was truly strange. Could there be another plan? Miss Natalie, this way, please. Natalie politely replied, I'm troubling you. After Natalie left, Charles quickly walked to the desk, picked up a pen and wrote, Immediately find Ryan Constance and tell him to come to the Duke's mansion. Then, Charles rang the bell, summoning the messenger bird. He tied the letter to its leg and watched as it flew away with the message. Opening the study door, the maid said, This is the study, Miss Natalie. Natalie thanked the maid once again. Hearing a voice call out, Miss Natalie, Natalie was surprised to see Eli here. To prevent Natalie from wondering, Eli immediately explained, I'm looking for a book analyzing romantic musicals, but I don't know where to start. Hearing the subject, Natalie suddenly remembered, perhaps you could look at a history of musicals by Mathis Keller. If I remember correctly, chapter 11 of this book should have related content. Really? You remember such a rare book so clearly? Let me look for it. My family has this book. I'll find it immediately to verify. Eli took the book down, here it is. Opening the book and reading, Eli was surprised that the content he was looking for was indeed in chapter 10, as Natalie said. Chapter 11, Romantic-era musicals stand out with their diverse style and characteristic lyricism, becoming an important school in music history. During this period, musicals emphasized expressing the character's emotions. Oh my, just as you said, Miss Natalie. You're unexpectedly knowledgeable. Natalie smiled, you flatter me. It was just a recent coincidence that I read it. Suddenly, Charles walked in, what are you two talking about? You seem to be getting along quite well. Miss Natalie helped me find the book I was looking for. It's truly wonderful. Natalie replied, you keep praising me, I'm quite embarrassed. Miss Natalie, there's no need to be so modest. Charles looked at Natalie and took her wrist. You're here to borrow Military Fortress, correct? This way. Follow me. Hearing this, Eli wondered, Military Fortress? Does Natalie even read that kind of book? Isn't she deliberately saying that to impress my uncle? It would be embarrassing if she were found out. Charles handed the book to Natalie. You can read it here, but you cannot take it outside. Natalie took the book, certainly. I didn't intend to take it anyway. Reading here might even give me more opportunities to interact with you. Natalie gently opened the book, and the atmosphere became quiet. She glanced at Charles. He really likes this book. I must seize this opportunity to show off. Even if I can't make him fall for me, at least I won't let him dislike me. That way, if Princess Elia targets me, he might protect me a little more. Natalie turned to Charles and asked. Duke, this book suggests that the current wall and tower system is outdated, and that it should be developed in the direction of thicker walls and larger tower bases. Do you agree? Of course. Currently, with the increased power and range of cannons, fortifications, in order to minimize losses, need lower walls and towers, while increasing wall thickness. Also, the base of the watchtower should be expanded to facilitate the installation of multiple cannons, for frontal defense and flanking fire into the trenches. Natalie asked Charles again, am I correct, Duke? Charles didn't expect Natalie to be so knowledgeable about military fortifications. He had underestimated her, thinking she was just pretending. Eli clicked his tongue. Although I don't understand what they're saying, judging from my uncle's expression, it seems Miss Natalie's performance was beyond his expectations. Eli thought, I need to create more opportunities for Charles, so he can get a better grasp of Miss Natalie. Miss Natalie, please forgive my presumption, but I still have many questions to ask you. If you have time, please visit the Duke's mansion frequently. Natalie blushed. Well, this. Charles frowned. This guy, could he be interested in Natalie because of what just happened? Seeing this, Charles reminded Eli, you should leave now. Eli cheerfully bid farewell as it was time for him to leave. Suddenly he changed his mind. Today, I'm free and can stay with you guys, conveniently come up with ways to bring you two together so that you can experience the enthusiasm of your nephew like me. Charles meaningfully said, Eli, think again. Are you sure you have no plans today? Eli flinched. He immediately realized his uncle was angry. Although he didn't know where he had offended him, he was definitely angry. Eli broke out in a cold sweat. Eli hastily ran away like smoke. I suddenly remembered I do have an urgent matter today. I'll take my leave now. Now, only Charles and Natalie were left. She secretly guessed that since he drove Eli away like that, did it mean they were alone now? If she were a woman who truly liked Charles, she would be very happy at this moment. Therefore, Natalie decided to play the role properly. She quickly put on a shy expression and said, Duke, did you suddenly drive Eli away because he invited me to the mansion and you were jealous? Charles was speechless. You're overthinking it. I just found him noisy and delaying my reading. Eli sighed regretfully, is that so? I thought the Duke had some favorable feelings for me, even if only a little, that would be enough. Charles thought to himself. This Natalie's mouth really knows how to lie. Just then, a maid entered and announced to the Duke, Mr. Ryan has arrived. Charles agreed to let him in. Natalie was curious, since when did Ryan have a connection with the Duke's mansion? As soon as Ryan entered, he politely greeted Charles. He also courteously invited Ryan to sit down. Natalie secretly assessed Charles's attitude towards Ryan, which was polite. Could it be he specifically invited him here? Why? Based on Ryan's status, he shouldn't even be in the Duke's mansion. Now Ryan spoke, thanking Charles. He was suddenly stunned to see Natalie there as well. He remembered Fiona saying she was recently trying to seduce the Duke. Could it be she succeeded? And even instigated the Duke to cause trouble for me? Ryan hurriedly said, Duke, although I don't know why you asked me to come, I want to say that I've heard the Locks talk about your undefeated reputation and your powerful ice magic. I admire you very much, so being able to meet you today is an honor. Please accept my heartfelt compliments. Charles noticed that this Ryan didn't seem to match the image of the scumbag he had heard about. He stood up decisively and said, no need for so many words. You can read with Natalie here. I have to leave for a moment. Ryan was slightly surprised that Charles didn't seem to have any intention of causing him trouble. Natalie realized, so that's it. Charles agreed to lend me the book and had Eli invite Ryan over, probably because he heard the rumor that Ryan was pursuing me, and he wanted to set us up. That way, I'll be further away from Charles. I wonder if Charles understands Ryan's true character before making such a decision. However, since things have come to this, I might as well play along. Ryan thought, if Duke Bennox intends to let me in, not to cause trouble, then this is a good opportunity to win over Natalie. I can't miss it. He forced a smile and said to Natalie, you misunderstood the last time. I only liked you, and have never liked Fiona. You must know about my feelings for you. Natalie said, of course I know. Indeed, a fool. Fiona saying she seduced the Duke must be false. Otherwise, why would she believe me so easily with a little coaxing? Ryan thought as he asked Natalie. So, do you agree to be with me? He thought she would reluctantly agree due to his status. Suddenly, Natalie said, don't rush. I have a surprise for you. He was puzzled. What is it? Abruptly, Natalie tore a piece of her sleeve. Ryan was shocked, but before he could react, Natalie had already thrown herself against the wall. The impact was quite forceful. Outside, Charles was still thinking, Ryan must have seized the opportunity to express his feelings to Natalie by now. I wonder if she agreed. He speculated, if she agrees, then she won't pester me anymore in the future. Thinking this, Charles was about to turn and leave. He thought that doing so was also for Natalie's safety. Suddenly, he heard a noise coming from the room. Charles immediately returned to check the situation. Unexpectedly, Natalie was now sitting on the floor, trembling as she spoke, Mr. Ryan, I know you like me, but I don't have feelings for you. Please don't do this. He had never imagined the situation would turn out like this. Charles quickly ordered someone to restrain Ryan and hurried to Natalie's side. Ryan panicked and tried to explain, Duke, it wasn't me. He finally understood that Natalie had deliberately set him up, cursing her in his mind. Seeing Natalie injured, Charles worriedly wanted to take her to get bandaged, but she weakly said, I'm sorry, Duke. I'm so scared, my legs have no strength. Charles was silent for a few seconds. But then he reached down and scooped Natalie up into his arms. He gently lifted her. Natalie hadn't expected that she was only pretending to be weak, and Charles would actually carry her. It seemed he wasn't as cold as the rumors said, but rather gentle and considerate. Ryan, still behind them, yelled, Duke. I swear before the goddess of light, from the moment I stepped into this room, I haven't touched Natalie. She deliberately cut herself to frame me. You absolutely must not believe her. Charles's footsteps paused slightly. Regarding Ryan Constance's accusations, do you have anything to say? He asked Natalie, who calmly replied, I like you so much, how could I bear to hurt myself? If my hand is scarred, I won't be able to receive your affection. Upon hearing these words, Ryan shouted, You're lying. You're deceiving Duke Bennox. Natalie softly replied, If Mr. Ryan refuses to admit it, then let the Duke investigate thoroughly. I have always treated him well and have absolutely no reason to frame him. Mr. Ryan surely wouldn't feel ashamed, would he? Ryan felt as if stabbed in the heart, because if Duke Bennox were to investigate, the agreement between him and Fiona wouldn't remain hidden. This would be even more disadvantageous for him. He knew Natalie was clearly acting, but if he tried to cover it up, it would only make him appear more suspicious. At this moment, Charles said, No need for investigation. I believe Miss Natalie. Take Ryan Constance down and give him a flogging. Inform Earl Constance that I will discipline his son for him and that he should come to collect him. Ryan couldn't believe Charles could be so cold and ruthless. He knelt on the ground, knowing he was finished. If his father knew he had offended Duke Bennox, he would be greatly disappointed and wouldn't care about him anymore in the future. Throughout the Bennox family mansion, Ryan's miserable screams echoed. As each lash landed squarely on his body, Charles callously carried Natalie past, not even sparing him a glance. The screams were so pleasant to hear, truly satisfying Natalie. Ryan was filled with hatred. It was all because of Natalie's deliberate setup. Her previous innocent appearance was all fake. She just wanted to use Duke Bennox's hand to kill him. Held in Charles's arms, Natalie thought, Don't worry, I won't let you die so quickly, Ryan. This flogging you've come to receive today is just the appetizer in my revenge banquet. In the past life, you tortured, humiliated, and imprisoned me. I will return it all to you tenfold, without missing a thing. I will make you fall into a terrifying abyss step by step, so you can also taste the feeling of a life worse than death. Natalie was greatly pleased to witness Ryan enduring the strong blows. She suppressed her laughter, thinking that everything Ryan Constance was receiving was only his just desserts. Suddenly, Charles noticed Natalie trembling and asked, "What's wrong?" Only then did Natalie realize, "Oh no, I was so happy and smug that I forgot myself." She had to make up a story, "I'm so sorry. The image of the whipping is too bloody. I'm truly scared," making the Duke laugh. "If you would allow me, could I lean on you a little?" Charles was puzzled. He had already punished Ryan, so why did Natalie still need to pretend to be weak? But he didn't refuse her request, which surprised Natalie a little. So she pushed her luck, blushing as she said, "Thank you, Duke. Being able to lean on you, even if I shed a lot of blood, would be worth it." Charles found this woman truly troublesome. But he didn't blame her. Back in his room, he pondered, if Ryan wasn't lying, why would she go so far as to harm herself to frame him? Charles was truly perplexed. Suddenly, a subordinate entered, reporting an urgent matter. Charles told him to come outside to talk. The man blamed himself. "Due to Princess Elia's intervention, the results of my investigation on Ryan Constance were flawed. In reality, he has gambling debts in his territory and often gets into fights. And causes trouble. He's truly nothing more than scum." Hearing this, Charles understood. No wonder Natalie acted so strangely. Without further ado, Charles told the subordinate to take his punishment. Then he returned to Natalie. She told Charles that she had been bandaged and thanked him. He thought to himself, if I hadn't hastily paired her with Ryan without a clear investigation, she wouldn't have resorted to such extreme measures to protect herself. Charles suddenly felt very guilty and stammered. At that moment, Charles's father appeared, scolding his son, "You rascal, how could you care for Natalie and let her get hurt?" Eli, also present, reproached Charles, "That's right, uncle. Normally, you manage so many soldiers without any problems. Today, you let Miss Natalie get hurt right under your nose. You definitely weren't attentive enough." Seeing Charles being misunderstood, Natalie quickly explained, "I only have a minor injury, it's nothing. Please don't blame the Duke." Charles didn't expect her to speak up for him. "So it doesn't hurt anymore, huh?" Charles's father praised Natalie. "You're so understanding. I'll give you face and spare this rascal." He turned to Charles and instructed him to personally escort Natalie home safely. Charles didn't refuse, because he also had something he wanted to ask Natalie. This made her rather uneasy. What did Charles want to ask? The next day, someone knocked on Natalie's door. It was the butler announcing that the Grand Duke, the Duke, and Mr. Eli had come to visit her. Natalie invited all three in. But unexpectedly, Fiona and her stepmother were also there. Her stepmother had instructed Fiona to control her expressions and follow them to get acquainted. Upon meeting, Natalie greeted them, "Good morning, Earl, Duke, and Mr. Eli." The Duke told Natalie, "No need to be so tense. We'll be family sooner or later. Treat me like your father." Eli also chimed in, advising, "Natalie is injured and shouldn't move around too much. It's best to sit down quickly. Not sitting down might aggravate the injury. If that happens, wouldn't my uncle be heartbroken?" Eli playfully winked at Charles. He frowned upon hearing Eli's nonsense again. Charles's father laughed heartily, saying he was relieved to see Natalie looking well. Natalie's father secretly assessed the situation. It was clear that the Grand Duke was very fond of his daughter, but he was still concerned that Duke Bennox was too dangerous. He only hoped that Natalie could live a peaceful life. In this regard, Charles Bennox was clearly not a suitable match. Fiona, witnessing the scene, trembled with anger. She wondered, damn it, what kind of spell did this monster cast on the Duke to make him trust her so much? She absolutely would not allow Natalie to have the most beloved man in the Empire. She had to marry someone better and live a better life for the rest of her days. Natalie gloated as she observed Fiona's furious, reddened face. She suddenly thought, if I add fuel to the fire, Fiona might just explode. Thinking so, she immediately put on a bright smile and said, "Thank you, Grand Duke, for your kindness, and Mr. Eli for your concern. If I could receive the Duke's pity for being injured, then the wound wouldn't hurt as much." The Grand Duke disagreed, correcting her words, "What are you saying? Even if you weren't injured, he should still care for you. Otherwise, I'll teach him a lesson." Natalie politely thanked him. Fiona became even more bitter seeing how much the Grand Duke cherished Natalie. The Grand Duke continued chatting happily with Natalie, while Charles thought, this woman, to win my favor, can even sincerely utter such cursed words. She's truly gone mad. Suddenly, the Grand Duke noticed his son's aloof attitude and inwardly scolded him, you blockhead. Natalie is actively being friendly, and you're not responding. Just see if you'll regret it when such a wonderful wife runs away. But since he was his son after all, he thought he should help Charles. He said, Natalie will probably need to change her bandages soon. Let's not linger any longer. Let's go to the living room. The stepmother politely invited them to enjoy tea and pastries made by Fiona herself. Eli frankly replied, tea is fine, but no pastries. Grandfather, and I don't really like sweets. They're too rich. The Grand Duke agreed, saying tea was enough. The stepmother put on a flattering smile, while Fiona's mood worsened considerably. Suddenly, Eli noticed Charles was still in the room. He said, after all, Natalie was injured because of you, uncle. You should stay and take better care of her. After saying that, Eli slammed the door shut, leaving Charles behind. Finally, only silence remained between Charles and Natalie in the large room. She thought, Mr. Eli has created the opportunity. It would be a pity if I didn't seize it. Just then, Natalie noticed the bandages placed on the table. She put on a pitiful expression as if intending to change them herself. Seeing Natalie's difficulty, Charles wondered, why didn't she call a servant? But Charles sighed, thinking that he had indeed caused her injury, so lending a hand wouldn't be wrong. He carefully sat down and offered to help Natalie change her bandages. Of course, having the Duke personally change my bandages is too much happiness. Charles only replied, there's no one else here, so stop putting on an act. I'll remove the bandages. Turn your head away. Natalie obediently complied. She was surprised that Charles's movements were even gentler than Bella's. Could it be because he felt guilty about the Ryan incident that he was being especially careful? Such an unpredictable side. Natalie had thought someone like Charles, with such a high position, wouldn't care about other people's feelings, but when she looked over, she saw. Charles's focused expression as he bandaged her wound was truly captivating. Even the action of using his mouth to bite off the excess fabric was enough to make Natalie blush with embarrassment. Natalie staring like that made Charles feel awkward, so he stopped and looked up at her. He explained, I'm used to doing it this way in the army. It's much faster. Then Charles turned and told Natalie, let's go to the living room for tea. In the living room, the stepmother introduced the tea to the Earl. This is red tea from the East. Please try it. The teacup, emitting a faint fragrance, was poured by a maid. The Grand Duke, smelling it, seemed to find it a unique aroma. On the other hand, Natalie realized something seemed off about this maid. Suddenly, the teacup tilted and spilled. The maid was startled. She quickly knelt down and begged Natalie for forgiveness, I didn't do it on purpose. Please don't kill me. Both the Grand Duke and Eli were surprised to hear the maid pleading with Natalie not to kill her. Natalie's father exclaimed in alarm, Martha, what nonsense are you saying? How could Natalie kill you for spilling a cup of tea? Fiona also chimed in, exactly. People who don't know might think that my sister abuses her every day. The stepmother added, I must remind you that falsely accusing your master in front of the Duke is a serious crime. Surely you're not that foolish. Martha cried as she glanced at Natalie. But Natalie hadn't expected Martha's acting skills to be so good. Looking at Martha's terrified expression, how could she be so convincing? She recalled a time when Natalie had tearfully asked Martha, hasn't my divorce letter reached the capital yet? Why hasn't the church responded? Martha had simply replied with disdain. Poor Miss Natalie, I'll tell you the truth. I've already become Mr. Ryan's person. Your letter never even left the house. Martha had uttered those cruel words herself. In the previous life, after Bella's death, Martha, as Natalie's personal maid, had accompanied her to her husband's territory, but she had harmed Natalie, leading to her imprisonment. Natalie had trusted Martha, relying on her, only to be pushed into the depths of despair by her. Now, Martha was still putting on a passionate performance. I absolutely wouldn't dare falsely accuse Miss in front of the Duke. I was just momentarily flustered and disrespectful because I made a mistake. Natalie's father immediately criticized Martha, saying that only makes people more suspicious of Natalie. What are you trying to do? Martha apologized, saying she didn't know how to speak and begged the Earl for forgiveness. Today, Martha had once again become the knife that the stepmother and Fiona aimed at Natalie, resorting to any means to ruin her reputation and bring her down. Martha's slip-up truly enraged Natalie's father. He remembered that Martha and Ryan had been involved in a shady affair. Natalie decided that today, she would deal with Martha first, as a prelude to her revenge. Seeing the situation getting out of control, Natalie's father stood up and apologized to the Grand Duke. "Please don't listen to this servant's words. I swear on my life that Natalie is absolutely not that kind of person." Fiona was surprised that her father treated Natalie so well, always willing to sacrifice for her. But the more it was like this, the more Fiona wanted to make Natalie's afterlife restless. What she couldn't have, she thought, what right did Natalie have to possess it? She suddenly spoke up, "Father, you're busy with work and not often at home, so even if you swear to the Grand Duke, it won't be very credible. It will be seen as covering up for her. Why don't we hear what sister has to say?" But Natalie had never encountered this situation, so her father feared. Just then, the stepmother interjected, "I think Fiona has a point. Natalie is the one involved and has the right to explain herself. That would be more credible. Grand Duke, what do you think?" The stepmother thought slyly, "Natalie is always weak and foolish. In a moment, she won't be able to explain herself even with 100 mouths. Of course, no one will believe her." The Grand Duke decided to listen and see what happened. He asked Natalie, "Martha is now accusing you of mistreating servants. Do you have any explanation?" Eli also told Natalie to tell them if she was hiding anything. "My uncle is here. As long as you explain clearly, he will certainly be able to distinguish right from wrong and make a fair judgment for you." Natalie looked at Charles and asked him if he would truly make a fair judgment for her. He calmly agreed, if she was truly innocent. In that case, Natalie also decided to speak up. She said without hesitation, "Actually, I'm not innocent at all." Before the puzzled gazes of the three men waiting for her explanation, Charles was even more astonished when this crazy woman actually admitted it. So what did she ultimately want to do? Natalie started to cry, saying, "Although I've never mistreated the servants, Martha's fear of me probably means I've done something wrong and caused her to misunderstand. Lord Duke, Your Grace, I hope you can do justice for Martha and thoroughly investigate this matter, also allowing me to understand where I fell short so I can correct myself." These words truly surprised the old Duke, who hastily said, "Natalie, I didn't expect you to reflect on yourself at this time. Your virtue is nobler than I imagined." Eli, beside him, spoke up, assuring Natalie, "Don't worry, if you've said so, we will definitely investigate the truth and clear your name." Natalie gratefully thanked the old Duke and Eli. Charles was slightly surprised that this woman actually used the tactic of retreating as advancing. She wasn't stupid. Natalie's father, seeing the situation progressing, politely appealed to the old Duke. Although he didn't want his darling Natalie to marry into the Bennox family. For the sake of Natalie's reputation, he still felt it was best to rely on them to investigate this matter first. The stepmother panicked as her plan was nearly foiled. She had to think of a way to prevent the Duke's household from interfering in this matter, otherwise, both she and Fiona would be dragged in. She quickly spoke up, "Lord Duke, Your Grace, you and the Duke are so busy, why not leave this matter to me to investigate?" Fiona also chimed in cheerfully, "That's right. Managing the servants in the house is my mother's responsibility. She will definitely give everyone a satisfactory result." Hearing this, Natalie shook her head in disagreement, saying, "My stepmother has always loved me. If she investigates, people will say she's covering up for my reputation. It's best to have the Duke investigate." The stepmother was startled that Natalie dared to interrupt her. She forced a smile and said, "Natalie is so thoughtful. Then we'll trouble the Lord Duke and His Grace." Of course, they didn't mind. Eli even said, "Miss Natalie will soon be my aunt. Using any resources of the Duke's household for her is worthwhile." At that point, the stepmother could only laugh awkwardly and agree. Charles, without hesitation, ordered someone to take Martha back to the Duke's mansion. Only then did Martha panic and stammer, pleading. Unfortunately for her, her stepmother bluntly said, "At the Duke's mansion, you must tell the truth. If you dare to lie, not to mention the Duke, I won't spare you either." She mouthed, "And your family too." Martha trembled and burst into tears as she realized the threat in her stepmother's words. She seemed to be overwhelmed. Then, suddenly losing control, she yelled, "You nobles are all the same. I don't believe you'll give me justice. I absolutely won't go with you. Suddenly, she reached out and grabbed a shard of glass from the floor. Charles, sharp-eyed, saw Martha's action. He quickly shielded Natalie behind him. Martha, the maid, felt wronged. She shouted in front of everyone, "You will all go to hell." Charles immediately covered Natalie, using defensive maneuvers. Natalie's face was filled with worry. She stood frozen, hiding behind him. In that moment, she felt him save her once again. Martha, reaching the peak of her anger, unable to restrain herself any longer, used the shard in her hand to end her own life. Charles Bennox, witnessing this scene, was stunned and shouted, "Hey, you!" Natalie also froze, stunned. Everyone else was also surprised and ran over. What happened? Fiona and her mother feigned shock and horror. Martha, she actually committed suicide? Oh my God, how terrifying. Bennox shielded Natalie, but she still couldn't help but be shaken by the suicide. She sadly thought to herself, my stepmother's methods are indeed as cruel as I imagined. It's just a pity that even though Martha's end is what I hoped for, now is not the time to show joy. Suddenly, Natalie gripped Bennox's hand tightly. Her head spun, and she fainted, murmuring, "So much blood." Fortunately, as she fell, Bennox caught her. He was also startled and extremely anxious. Seeing his daughter faint, her father rushed over, his face pale with worry. The stepmother also pretended to be concerned. Poor Natalie, seeing this scene must have frightened her. Someone, take the young miss back to her room to rest. Bennox's father urged his son. Natalie fainted. Aren't you going to take her back to her room? Bennox looked at Natalie, speechless. He sighed softly and said to her, "All right." Then he lifted Natalie up and excused himself from everyone. "I'll take my leave." Eli, seeing this, rejoiced inwardly. "Uncle, go for it. You must seize this opportunity." Fiona stared at Eli. She was seething with jealousy, her eyes red. She cursed Natalie under her breath, "You bitch. What right do you have to attract the attention of both Eli and Duke Bennox at the same time? I'll never forgive you. Absolutely never." The scene shifts to Natalie's room. Bennox gently carried Natalie into the room. Then he said coldly, "There's no one here. You can stop pretending." Natalie felt guilty, thinking angrily, this man is really hard to fool. I clearly fainted very realistically. But no matter how he exposes me, I have to keep pretending. There's no turning back now. Then Natalie regained her composure and continued her act. She sighed and said evasively, "Your Grace, how could I bear to deceive you? I was truly frightened to the point my legs went weak." Bennox then said, "Is that so? Then let me drop you and see." And he let go of her, letting her fall freely. Natalie's expression became flustered. She couldn't believe he actually let go. She staggered, unable to stand. Once again, Bennox caught her. Natalie feigned embarrassment, saying, "Thank you, Your Grace. I didn't expect you to still care about me. I'm truly honored." Bennox said with some irritation, "You're really stubborn. What's the point of continuing to act even after being caught?" Natalie continued to play innocent. "I don't understand what you're saying. I'm absolutely sincere with you. No matter how many times you test me, I'll say the same thing." Bennox said in a low voice, "Is that so?" He was also looking forward to seeing how far she could take her act. Then he grasped her chin. "If you like me so much, now that we're alone in a room, you must be looking forward to intimacy, right?" Natalie was taken aback, speechless, unsure how to respond. Bennox gently placed his hand on her lips. Natalie froze. She didn't understand why he was suddenly acting like this. Was he testing her? She calmed herself and said to him, "Of course, I'm willing, but I'm a little worried." Bennox didn't wait for her to finish and said, "If you're worried, close your eyes." Natalie closed her eyes, provoking Bennox, "I didn't expect you to take the initiative. Is this proof that you like me a little?" Inwardly, she was in turmoil. Why did he tell me to close my eyes? Could he really be testing me by kissing me? We're not in that kind of relationship. Bennox also reconsidered everything. From the chaos just now, it was clear that her stepmother and stepsister were not simple, and the Earl was often busy and away from home. He could imagine what she had gone through growing up. Natalie kept her eyes tightly shut and was very nervous. Why isn't there any movement? Could he want to do something more daring than a kiss? Ben Knox thought silently. So she's clinging to me to seek the protection of the Duke's household and escape her current situation? After waiting for too long, Natalie muttered, I can't see anything. I don't feel safe. Your Grace, why aren't you doing anything? Did you suddenly become disgusted with me? Ben Knox smiled slightly. Then he let go of her and turned away as if nothing had happened. He thought to himself, then let's maintain this relationship for now. After all, at this point, if I ignore her, the palace will make her die a miserable death. Then he turned around and said to her, rest. I'll go deal with the maid's matter. Natalie watched his retreating figure and was furious. How hateful. So he's rejecting me? The scene changes to the palace. Earl Carlisle walked back, exhausted. He sighed as he walked, finally done. I can go home now. I wonder if Natalie is asleep yet. Just thinking about his daughter being hurt and him not being able to be by her side filled him with shame. Suddenly, someone called the Earl's name from behind. It turned out to be Princess Arya. She said, long time no see, Earl. Have you been well recently? Earl Carlisle immediately bowed respectfully, thank you for your concern, Princess Arya. I am well. Arya chuckled disdainfully, I heard that your daughter, Miss Natalie, was attacked not long ago. Earl Carlisle was very surprised. He thought anxiously, how did this news reach the palace? Could it be, like Natalie said, that all the women around Ben Knox met tragic ends because of Arya's orders? Arya said pointedly, looking at the Earl's expression, I know you are an intelligent man. I hope your daughter has inherited that intelligence. Otherwise, there will be more terrible things waiting for her. Earl Carlisle was very worried, as this was a blatant threat and warning. Then he tried to compose himself and cheerfully replied, I apologize for worrying you, Your Highness. I will quickly find a gentle and considerate husband for Natalie. That way, her life can be more peaceful. Arya, with a sinister expression, was very satisfied with the Earl's answer. She said, Earl, you are indeed the best diplomat in the capital. You truly understand people's hearts. I look forward to your performance. Don't make this princess wait too long. Then she and her maid left. Earl Carlisle saw them off and worriedly pondered the situation. Princess Arya has been spoiled by His Majesty since childhood and is known for her arrogant and vengeful nature. If Natalie loses the protection of the Duke's household, I fear she won't just stop, but will seek revenge madly. There's no other way. I can only continue to facilitate things between Natalie and Eli. Eli is very good to Natalie and can continue to be protected by the Duke's household. He can definitely help Natalie escape Princess Arya's clutches. The scene shifts to the next morning at Duke Banknox's residence. He was writing a letter to someone. The contents of the letter read, a remote district is experiencing unrest caused by foreign interference. This isn't my concern, but Grand Duke Gilala seems to think this matter is important enough for my attention. Suddenly, Eli knocked on the door. He excitedly brought something. Uncle, I brought you something good. But Ben Knox just coldly said, put it on the table. Eli said irritably, can you focus on work for a bit? This is an invitation handwritten by the Earl, your future father-in-law. Eli placed it on the table for his uncle to see clearly. He said cheerfully, with a grin, a formal invitation must mean there's something important to discuss. Why don't you open it and see? But when Ben Knox opened it and read it, he was very surprised. The invitation read, to Eli Ben Knox, with spring approaching, you are invited to the Earl's residence for afternoon tea. Ben Knox was surprised that only Eli was invited. He put the letter back in its envelope, thinking with some disappointment, it's only natural. The Earl initially chose Eli for his daughter. Eli panicked, why do you have that expression? Is it bad news? Could Natalie's injuries be more serious? Ben Knox snapped at Eli, don't spout nonsense. It's afternoon tea. I have work. You take the gifts and go. Eli was surprised. Why him? Ben Knox said coldly, if you don't want to go, then don't. Eli thought, exasperated, my uncle is so clueless. He's sending me on this errand? But me going is better than anyone else. Then he walked out sullenly, turning back to tell his uncle, fine, I'll go. But you're paying for the gifts. The scene shifts to Earl Carlisle's residence. He and Miss Natalie came out to greet their guest. Eli cheerfully held a gift box in his hand, greetings, Earl. Natalie felt something was strange. Her father suddenly said he had something important to discuss with Eli and that she must be present. It was very odd. Eli said to Natalie, "This is a gift my uncle chose for you. Please accept it." Eli thought slyly, "I still have to rely on myself. Otherwise, who knows when my uncle would be able to pursue my aunt." Natalie accepted the gift and thanked him. Earl Carlisle also realized, it seems Ben Knox knows I invited Eli here specifically. But that's good too. Since he knows my intentions, he probably won't pursue Natalie. Then he said generously, "The garden is ready. Please come in, Eli." Meanwhile, Ben Knox couldn't concentrate on his work documents. He was irritated. This work is so troublesome. He kept looking at the invitation on his desk, growing more restless. Then he called his maid, Linda. She asked respectfully, "Your Grace, what are your orders?" Ben Knox asked the maid to choose a suitable outfit for him. He said, "I want to go to the Earl's residence." She agreed and immediately went to do it. In the garden, Natalie conversed with her father. "Why did you specifically invite Eli here? What's the important matter?" She looked worried and anxious. Eli pointed at himself in surprise. "Me? Not my uncle?" Earl Carlisle chuckled and explained, "Well, it's like this. Duke Ben Knox is busy. I thought it would be too much trouble to ask him to visit Natalie again. I heard that Eli has more free time and is skilled in music, singing, and dancing, so I wanted to ask you to keep Natalie company. She's at home recovering and is bored. She needs some entertainment to relax and pass the time." Natalie was stunned. So her father wanted to continue pushing her and Eli together. After all, in the Earl's mind, the Duke was always a dangerous figure. Finally, Ben Knox had prepared everything for his visit to the Earl. He strode forth, causing the maid, who was working, to stop in surprise. He walked with an air of danger. "Greetings, Duke Ben Knox. The Earl and the young miss are having afternoon tea in the garden. I will escort you there." The maid looked worried, walking slowly. "Oh my, why is the Duke here?" A moment later, she said, "Your Grace, just ahead is the young Miss's area." He gave a non-committal then suddenly heard Eli's voice. "I do have more free time and I understand music and singing, but keeping Natalie company." Ben Knox stood outside, unintentionally overhearing their conversation. Seeing Eli's troubled expression, Earl Carlisle asked him, "Is there something troubling you, young master?" "That's a shame. Natalie has always enjoyed your company." Overhearing this, Ben Knox felt a pang of displeasure and jealousy. The Earl's words, "always enjoyed your company," echoed in his mind. Eli was surprised and quickly denied it. "Excuse me, Earl, I don't understand what you mean by Natalie always enjoying my company." The Earl looked at Natalie, chuckling mischievously. "It's exactly that." But she quickly denied it. "It's nothing. It's exactly what it means. I do enjoy Eli's company." Ben Knox thought, so her affection for me was all an act. He turned to leave. She shyly explained, "Because I've always wanted to understand Duke Knox through you." Ben Knox overheard this and stopped. She said sincerely, "I want to understand the Duke, but I don't dare approach him. So, being with you is the best way to understand him. I'm truly sorry if you find it troublesome. You don't have to pay attention to my request." Eli's eyes lit up, and he said enthusiastically, "So that's it. My whole family hopes Miss Natalie and my uncle will be together. How could I find it troublesome? Not at all. I'm very happy." She thanked him quietly, "Then I'm relieved." But Earl Carlisle was confused. "Natalie seems to completely misunderstand my good intentions. It seems I'll have to choose a better time to talk to her." Ben Knox, hearing her words, felt a surge of joy inside. "She really never forgets to play the role of someone who likes me." Eli asked cheerfully, "By the way, Miss Natalie, isn't this the perfect opportunity? Ask me anything you want to know about my uncle. I guarantee, I'll tell you everything." She lowered her head slightly, stroking her chin, and said thoughtfully, "If you say so, Eli, then I won't be polite. Actually, I've always wanted to ask if the Duke has ever liked anyone before. And what kind of person she was." Eli thought for a moment. "It's hard to say. My uncle does seem to have liked someone." Natalie was startled by this information. She thought she was just asking casually, but it turned out to be true, and he even kept it in his heart. It was hard to imagine what kind of person could make the Duke cherish her for so long. Her expression turned sad. Eli tried to explain, hinting vaguely to distract her. Well, actually, I don't know much about her. I only know she and my uncle met a long time ago. Suddenly, Ben Knox approached slowly and said, I didn't expect the topic of your afternoon tea to be me. Natalie was flustered, her mouth agape. Uncle. Everyone stood up and bowed to Duke Ben Knox. He said formally, no need for formalities. Sit. Natalie instructed the maid, let me make the tea. This is my favorite tea. Your Grace, try it and see if you like it. The maid agreed to let the princess make the tea. He turned to criticize Eli, if you keep talking nonsense, I'll deduct your entire allowance next month. Eli was shocked, disbelieving what he just heard. He whined and pleaded with the Duke, I wasn't talking nonsense. Aren't you always looking? Ben Knox cut Eli off, one more word and I'll deduct 10 gold coins. The two bickered back and forth. Not long after, Natalie came to pour tea for the Earl. While pouring, she couldn't help but think about Eli's words. He didn't deny it. If there's someone in his heart, my chances are even slimmer than I imagined. Should I find a chance to give up? I hope Princess Arya won't kill me because of this misunderstanding. Her hand trembled as she gripped the teapot. Ben Knox tasted the tea, but he also noticed Princess Natalie's gloomy expression. She sat down with a dazed look. Ben Knox observed her expression, saying to himself, why is she suddenly acting dumb? She should be bothered by what Eli said just now. He placed his teacup on the table. Delicious tea. Thank you for the hospitality, Earl. Natalie jumped at his voice. She accidentally dropped the teapot. Everyone warned her to be careful. Tea splashed onto Ben Knox, and the teapot shattered on the floor. He asked worriedly, are you all right? Are you burned? I'm fine, she said, looking at his hand. You, on the other hand, are you burned? Inside a hotel. Ryan had a meeting with Princess Fiona. She said, why did you ask me here? Have you come up with a new way to seduce Natalie? It seemed they were discussing a plan targeting Natalie. Ryan said, I haven't thought of a way yet, but you have to give me 100 gold coins. He held out his hand. Fiona cried out, what? 100 gold coins? You're extorting me. Many guests around them took notice. She was embarrassed by her outburst. She covered her face and said with annoyance, didn't we agree? You'll get the Earl's assets after marrying Natalie. Now you can't even coax her into an engagement. And you have the nerve to ask for so much money? Ryan remained calm and indifferent. I've no choice. I've spent too much money waiting around in the capital because of your schemes against Natalie. She retorted. You must have gambled it away. Otherwise, you couldn't have become poor so quickly. Besides, you're not helping us. We had an agreement. I can't give you so much money before we succeed. Ryan replied provocatively, then I can only find time to meet the Earl and tell him about our plan. Maybe he'll reward me for helping him expose you venomous mother and daughter. She lost her composure and shouted at him, are you threatening me? Ryan smirked, yes, I'm threatening you. What can you do about it? Fiona was furious, gritting her teeth to suppress her rage. You, damn you. She wanted to tear his arrogant face apart, but she couldn't afford to offend a penniless gambling addict here. Who knew what terrible things he might do? She placed a large pouch on the table. Here's 10 gold coins. That's all I have with me right now. I'll have the rest sent to you later. Ryan grinned with delight. He demanded, bring me the rest today. Don't make me wait. She was flustered, helpless against his demand. He added, and from now on, prepare 100 gold coins every month until I marry that little bitch. He made exorbitant demands, threatening and exploiting her. Fiona exclaimed, what? Does it seem too little? Do you want me to increase it? She refused and said firmly, no, no. I agree. 100 gold coins. I'll send someone to deliver it on time every month. I absolutely won't break my promise. Ryan said coldly, good that you know better. Get lost. Fiona left, thinking about him as she walked away. That damned gambling addict. Back at the tavern, he ordered another drink from the bartender, chuckling to himself. This fool is easier to deceive than Natalie. I should think about switching to a different money-making target. After all, the Earl said Fiona's dowry wouldn't be small. In the garden, Natalie worriedly checked on Duke Bennox. He said gently, "It's nothing. This doesn't even count as an injury." She advised, "You should still apply medicine. Burns are very painful. Give me your hand." Eli said cheerfully, joking to lighten the mood, "Don't worry, Miss Natalie. My uncle grew up in the military camps and has been injured countless times, but he's never cried out in pain once. He's a very reliable man." She was touched, tears welling up. She said to herself, "If I remember correctly, in my past life, when I was in the Constance family's territory, I constantly heard news of him dying 9 times and surviving once on the battlefield. The entire Herzl Empire envied his power and prestige at such a young age, calling him the chosen one, the one favored by the gods. But they didn't know that those medals of glory were all exchanged for his life." Natalie said, "I would rather you didn't have those achievements." Everyone was surprised by her words. Why would she say such a thing? Earl Carlisle turned and asked, "What did you say?" She stammered, embarrassed, "I said, if you didn't have those achievements and fame, you wouldn't have been injured." Bennox was stunned, remembering those times. "In my memories, whenever I was injured, I only received praise and encouragement." He recalled his childhood, when his father patted his head and comforted him, "Charles, you are so brave. You have the bearing of a great general at such a young age." His whole family came to encourage him, making Bennox happy. He's worthy of being a man of the Bennox family. In the future, he will definitely become the sword of the empire. Charles, you'll charm so many noble ladies in the future. I've already started worrying about how to choose the right one for him. You must maintain this bravery. At the time, Bennox wasn't happy at all, only more worried because everyone was talking about the future. But his eyes were filled with determination. "I will continue to maintain it." So, at that time, I could have said something else. He extended his hand. Natalie said gently, "Let me apply the medicine." Their eyes met softly. "All right. I'll go get the medicine box right away." 10 minutes later, she gently wiped his hands with a damp cloth. "Tell me if it hurts." "I'll try to be gentle." Earl Carlisle looked regretful and dissatisfied. "I initially wanted to pair Natalie with Eli. Why did it backfire like this?" He signaled his daughter, whispering, "Hey, you." Bennox glanced at him. Suddenly, Eli arrived and blurted out, "Uncle, you're smiling again." Bennox quickly explained, "You're mistaken." "I'm not mistaken, young Master Eli. I saw it clearly too." Bennox felt helpless as they hit the nail on the head, making him embarrassed. He didn't know what else to say. Bennox resorted to making an excuse. He said calmly, "I'm done with my work today. Can't I be happy for a bit?" But Eli interrupted, "How could you be done? I just went to work and saw a mountain of documents." He glared at Eli, "Do you think everyone is as inefficient as you?" Eli froze. Meanwhile, she thought, so he's just like an ordinary person. He's happy when he finishes his work early. This contrast makes him seem more approachable. All done. Natalie also reminded him, "Remember to change the medicine on time, young master." Bennox thanked her. Eli watched the two of them, their interaction filled with affection. Clearly, that smile is because of Miss Natalie, but my uncle is completely oblivious. He's surprisingly slow when it comes to romance. It seems I still have to rely on myself. The Duke said, "Excuse me." Eli just watched silently and nodded. Fiona returned home in a rage, smashing things in the house. "I'm so angry," she shouted, "while I was being extorted by that bastard Ryan outside, Father was at home arranging a tea party for that bitch. And the Duke and Eli were there too." Helena placed a hand on her daughter's shoulder and advised, "Calm down. Don't let the Earl see you like this. Otherwise, our plan will be even more difficult." Fiona was still resentful. "Mother, how much longer do I have to endure this shitty life? I really can't take it anymore." Helena comforted her daughter, "Don't worry, it won't be long. I've come up with a better plan." The scene changes. A maid handed Natalie a book and said, "This is everything they said." But she wondered, what exactly is the plan? The maid simply said, "They didn't specify." "It's all right. Knowing this much is enough." Natalie gave her a task, find someone to spread the news about Ryan and Fiona meeting privately at the tavern. Make sure the whole capital knows about their rendezvous, including my father. The maid hesitated. My lady, Shubella is foolish. Why don't you directly tell the Earl about their dealings? Princess Natalie wanted Fiona to marry Ryan. I want them to slowly experience all the suffering I endured in my past life. She was clearly plotting revenge against Fiona and her mother. That evening, during dinner, Earl Carlisle asked Fiona, the news about you and Ryan has spread throughout the capital. I've sent someone to Count Content's territory with a letter, urging him to discuss your marriage. Both Fiona and her mother were surprised, not understanding how her father had learned this information. What? She stood up, defending herself. Father, you're mistaken. The one who has feelings for Ryan is my sister, not me. Her mother confirmed, that's right. Ryan asked Fiona to meet him privately only to ask for her advice on how to pursue Natalie. Quickly retract the letter. Don't let Count Contents misunderstand. Natalie feigned concern. Sister, are you still jealous about what happened before? Don't be angry anymore. Lately, I've only met with Duke Knox and Eli, I haven't seen Ryan much at all. Fiona was furious. She knew she had been cornered. You damned bitch. You dare to flaunt it in front of me. Just you wait. Sooner or later, I'll trample you under my feet. Princess Natalie turned to her father and asked, by the way, father, didn't you ask Ryan? How did he explain it? He recounted the situation, he didn't explain. He just kept apologizing, saying he shouldn't have met privately with Fiona, damaging her reputation. Both Fiona and her mother froze, worried, realizing Ryan's true colors. How could this be? Damn it. Could it be that damned gambler realized Natalie isn't easy to fool? So he switched his target to Fiona? Helena sat down calmly, still feeling irritated inside. Seeing Helena's reaction and expression, Natalie said to herself, Ryan really didn't disappoint me. For the sake of money. He immediately betrayed our previous plan. It saves me the trouble of persuading my father. Fiona tugged on her mother's clothes, pleading. Her mother's expression remained resolute. Facing Natalie and her father, she absolutely couldn't let Fiona marry Ryan. Otherwise, her life would be ruined. But the rumors had spread throughout the capital. Without a valid reason, the Earl wouldn't retract the letter. The best course of action now was to buy time. To quickly make Ryan and Natalie a done deal. She forced a smile, trying to persuade the Earl, darling, if you've decided on Fiona's marriage, I won't object. But Fiona hasn't been feeling well recently. You should write another letter, asking Count Contents to postpone the marriage discussion, giving Fiona more time to prepare. Fiona asked softly, Mother, what are you saying? My body. She glared at her daughter, giving her a signal. Fiona suddenly understood her mother's intention and pretended to have a headache and feel faint. Oh, right. I've been feeling dizzy lately. I hope Father will give me a few more days. He agreed, we'll do as you say. As for Fiona's illness, I'll immediately invite a doctor to examine her. Thank you, darling. Fiona breathed a sigh of relief. Natalie carefully observed their behavior and thought to herself, want to buy time? Fine. I want to see what other tricks you have up your sleeves. The next day, Natalie went to the kitchen early. She saw that the wound on her hand was almost healed. In the past few days, she had received so much care from everyone at the Duke's mansion. I'll just make some pastries to show my gratitude. Shubella, the maid, led Duke Knox to the kitchen. She was surprised. Why is your grace here so early? He was embarrassed, recalling last night when he had a lot of work piled up, all for the evening, with no time to rest. He remembered thinking that he was quite busy during the day. It seems I'll have to stay up late tonight. But he concealed his real reason. It's nothing. I was passing by on official business, so I stopped by. Natalie smiled brightly, well, since you're here, why don't you help me make pastries? But Ben Knox hesitated. Suddenly, Fiona entered the kitchen. She said, Sister, really? The Duke is such a noble person, how can you drag him into the kitchen? Natalie replied, so, according to you, what should I do? Fiona approached Ben Knox, whispering, otherwise, let me make tea with his grace, while you and Bella bake a cake for him to enjoy. Ben Knox, showing his disapproval, brushed her hand off his shoulder, saying, step aside. No need. Fiona was surprised and embarrassed as he walked closer to Natalie. I find baking quite interesting. It just so happens that I've never tried it before. Natalie was surprised. Do you really want to try? I was just saying it casually. He stretched Natalie's apron and said, if Miss Fiona doesn't like the kitchen, then please leave. Don't bother seeing yourself out. She didn't expect him to be so proactive. Fiona panicked. Your Grace, I didn't mean that. Ben Knox led Natalie inside. Come on, tell me what to do first. She replied, let's prepare the cream first. She turned to look at Fiona's annoyed expression. But this is good too. I win without doing anything. Fiona must be furious. Fiona resented Natalie as she and the Duke were intimate with each other, ignoring her. She snapped at the maid, get out of the way. Shubella just looked at her and stifled a laugh. It's time. Let's see how our collaboration turned out. Natalie excitedly opened the oven. The cake smelled delicious, it seemed to be a success. She offered a piece to the Duke. This is thanks to your Grace's help, so please have the first bite. He was surprised and hesitated. Ben Knox remembered a childhood incident, when his younger sister called him. She said, brother, mother said when you're sad, eat a piece of cake and you'll feel better. Here, this is for you. It's sweet. He coldly turned to leave, but she grabbed his hand, coaxing him, here, and stuffed the cake into Ben Knox's mouth. He was very uncomfortable with this. Even now, he was still haunted by the past. Ben Knox shook his head, paying attention to the present moment. He subtly refused Natalie's cake. I hate sweets. After receiving Charles's rejection, Natalie's face fell, looking dejected. Not liking desserts, how strange. The way Duke Ben Knox said that sounds so familiar. After Mother's death, I couldn't control my longing for her. But so that Father wouldn't see me sad, I could only sneak out to her grave to visit. On a cold snowy night, I carefully brought 2 cakes to Mother's grave to show her. Mother, I finally learned how to make this dessert. It tastes exactly like the one you used to make for me. Just eating this, I feel like you're still with me. That way, I won't cry anymore. That day, I happened to meet him, a young boy with a sad face. I stared blankly at him. That brother looked so strange. I clearly didn't see him cry, but why did I feel like he was crying silently? I stood there watching for a long time, noticing that the woman on the tombstone in front of him had a face 7 parts similar to his. Had his mother also become an angel? The pain of losing a loved one, just like me, made me want to get closer to him. So, I ran over and, without saying anything, shoved a piece of cake into his mouth. To comfort him, I forced him to eat the dessert. It seemed my action scared him. It took a while for him to come to his senses. He just swallowed the cake whole, then looked at me with a wary expression. What are you doing? I don't like desserts. I innocently pointed at him and said, lying is bad. You clearly swallowed it, yet you say you don't like it. Faced with my logical words, he could only turn his head away in embarrassment. He didn't admit he was stubborn, but he didn't deny it either. After that, for a whole year, we often met at the cemetery to talk and share desserts. We became a special hollow tree, helping each other through that painful time. He gradually started to like the cakes I made. It tastes good. I pretended to sulk and replied, I don't believe you. You just like to pretend. Until my stepmother came into the picture. I couldn't sneak out to the cemetery anymore. It was then that I realized we had never exchanged names. Once we lost contact, there would be no way to find each other again. Back in reality, I only wished for one thing. If I could see him again, I really wanted to see if he was still as stubborn as before. Suddenly, she called out to Charles. Hey. He started to feel uneasy. Why did she sigh all of a sudden? Was it because of something I said? Charles quickly explained to reassure her. Although I don't like to eat them. This dessert doesn't look bad. Natalie grinned. That's great. Then please take it back for Duke Ben Knox and your family. I will prepare a separate thank you gift later. He took the cake box and nodded. All right, I'll take it. I have work to do, so I'll be going now. Just as Charles turned to leave, Natalie suddenly called out, wait. He turned his head curiously. Natalie approached him and offered, you have some flour on your nose. Allow me to wipe it off for you. If you don't answer, I'll take it as you agree. Bella, watching from afar, silently cheered her on. Miss, go for it. so Natalie gently wiped the flour off his face. They looked so intimate. Charles's heart was pounding. He quickly said, "It's done, all good. I'll be going now." "Goodbye." Natalie quickly bowed. "Farewell, Your Grace." Charles slowly walked down the hallway, muttering to himself, "This looks like what that girl made. What a pity." He stood still for a long time, lost in thought. Behind the curtain, a maid silently observed Charles's every move. Then, she hurried back to report to Natalie's stepmother. After hearing the full account from Hannah, the stepmother asked, "So you think Duke Banknox's dislike of desserts is likely related to a woman?" Hannah nodded firmly. "Yes, madam. Now you and Miss Fiona can rest assured. Even if Duke Banknox eventually marries the eldest lady, he will never love her." Fiona vehemently protested. "What nonsense are you talking about? He's the most sought-after man in the empire. The fact that Natalie is marrying him, even just as a decoration, is a great honor. I absolutely won't let that happen." The madam standing next to her reassured her daughter. "Don't worry, Fiona. This could be an opportunity for us." She was extremely curious. "What do you mean?" She gave a sinister smile. "I want to find out who the woman Duke Banknox holds in his heart is. She could become our most powerful weapon against Natalie." 2 days later, Charles and Natalie strolled together in the mansion's grounds. As they walked, he said, "My father really enjoyed the dessert you made. He asked me to thank you." Natalie gently replied, "You're welcome. It was my pleasure." Silence fell between them. Natalie closed her eyes, thinking worriedly, his injury is almost healed. This is probably the last time he'll come to the mansion to visit. I have to find a reason to continue seeing him. She stammered, Before she could finish her sentence, a servant came running with urgent news. "Your Grace, the king has an urgent order. The king has an urgent order. Roger County has a heretical rebellion. You are required to lead the troops to suppress it immediately." Charles calmly replied, "I understand." With that, Charles left with the servant, while Natalie stood there, her face full of worry, fearing her plans would fail. After taking only a few steps, Charles suddenly stopped. He turned back and said to Natalie gently, "I'm going now." Natalie stood stunned for a moment, then smiled shyly. "Be safe and return soon." After Charles left, Natalie wondered to herself, were his words just now considered a report to me? It seems I've had some success these past few days. Now I should take some time to meet the chef my grandfather just brought. I intentionally asked her to observe me making desserts today. I wonder if she noticed anything unusual. Lost in thought, she was startled when her father came running up, calling her name urgently. "Natalie?" She asked curiously, "Father, why are you looking for me in such a hurry?" Her father gripped her arm and seriously announced, "His Majesty has summoned you to the palace immediately. I'm worried that Princess Elia might want to make things difficult for you." Upon receiving the news, Natalie and her father quickly went to the Emperor's palace. "Please follow me." Both of them slowly followed the servant's guidance. Natalie walked, her mind racing with worry. I rarely have the opportunity to meet His Majesty. Being suddenly summoned must be Princess Arya's idea. But even knowing that, my father and I have no right to refuse. We can only obey the order. Father, out of concern, requested to accompany me to the audience, and His Majesty readily agreed. This made me feel a little more at ease. As they reached the entrance to the main hall, 2 servants greeted them. "Please enter." The doors slowly closed, everyone's expressions becoming extremely tense. Natalie felt increasingly uneasy. However, that small bit of reassurance soon vanished. Upon seeing them, the Emperor called out sternly, "Lord Calirus, you have arrived." Natalie and her father quickly bowed. "Your Majesty, may peace and the glory of the Goddess of Light be with you always." He replied, "There's no need for formalities." Then he turned and asked, "Natalie, is it? I hear that you've enjoyed reading since childhood and are proficient in many languages." She humbly replied, "You flatter me, Your Majesty. I only know a little." Natalie continued to worry, wondering, did Princess Arya tell His Majesty? Why is she suddenly mentioning this in front of him? What is her intention? The Emperor took out a stack of documents and presented a challenge to Natalie. "Knowing a little, let's see." This is a document recently collected by the intelligence department. I hope you can translate it within 3 days. His words were like a bolt from the blue for Natalie and her father. The intelligence department? Isn't this a very important document? To save his daughter from this difficult situation, Natalie's father spoke up for her. Your Majesty, Natalie is only self-taught in foreign languages. I'm afraid she cannot take on such an important responsibility. To avoid delaying state affairs, I hope you will choose someone else for this task. The emperor chuckled. Refusing before even trying, Count Treacherous, are you unwilling to let your daughter share the burden for the country? Or are you worried that I am deliberately using this to make things difficult for her? Seeing the emperor's misunderstanding, he hastily explained himself. How could that be? Your Majesty would absolutely not deliberately make things difficult for a young girl. This is not in line with your reputation for benevolence and generosity. Natalie stood beside him, speculating. Father is subtly reminding His Majesty that, regardless of the reason, if he deliberately gives me such a difficult task, it will affect the royal prestige. No matter what Natalie's father said, the emperor remained firm in his decision. All right, I understand your meaning. Now I can assure you that even if Natalie cannot translate it in 3 days, she will not face any punishment. Are you at ease now? A tense atmosphere filled the room. Everything became eerily silent. The emperor clearly understood this and immediately dispelled our worries. Although I still felt something was wrong, I couldn't find any excuse to refuse. Knowing she was cornered, Natalie could only smile and accept her fate. Thank you for your trust, Your Majesty. I will do my best to translate this document. Her father carefully took the stack of documents and promised the emperor, I will personally supervise Natalie. He nodded. Good. Now go and study it. After they had left, the emperor called out, all right, come out. Arya, who had been hiding nearby, came out with a bright smile. Father. He turned to his daughter and asked, are you happy now? Arya didn't answer, but just stood there, smiling with satisfaction. Thank you, Father, for agreeing to my request. You truly love me the most. He asked Arya the questions in his heart. But haven't you always liked that Bennox boy? Recently, Natalie, the Count's daughter, has been frequently interacting with him. Aren't you angry? Why did you recommend her to me? Arya hugged her father's arm and replied coquettishly, I want to help Father share his worries. You've been troubled by that document for a long time. Besides, I also want to see how capable Miss Natalie really is. If she truly excels, I can consider giving Charles to her. Hearing this, the emperor felt somewhat reassured. Arya has grown up. She replied shyly, thank you for the praise, Father. I'm also looking forward to Miss Natalie's results. Outwardly, Arya acted understanding, but deep down, she was full of schemes and cunning. After all, this document is a big gift I've carefully prepared for her. After leaving the emperor's palace and returning home, Natalie sat down seriously at the table with the thick pile of documents. I've been studying this document for hours. Besides figuring out it's a handwritten letter related to religion, I understand absolutely nothing else. Natalie held her head and cried out in despair. A few seconds later, she pulled herself together and put them away in the cupboard. There's still time. I'll put it aside for now. I'll wait until I find a reference book at the book market. She carefully locked the cupboard. Then she turned and called for Bella, who immediately appeared. Miss, what are your orders? Natalie instructed, call Chef Judy here. I need to ask her something. A while later, in Natalie's room, Judy arrived and asked seriously, Miss Natalie, you called me here to ask about the dessert making that day, correct? Natalie calmly replied. That day, I deliberately gave all the other cooks a day off and asked you to take the opportunity to observe. So, did you discover anything? She recounted everything she had witnessed that day. The others didn't have any problems, but Chef Hannah eavesdropped on your conversation with Duke Bennox, then rushed to Countess' room. Natalie curiously asked, do you know what she reported? Judy hesitated. I'm not sure about that. We're not allowed to enter the madam's room. Natalie found this increasingly strange. That day, Duke Bennox and I didn't talk about anything important. Why would she rush to report like that? Suddenly, Natalie stood up, startling Judy, who asked, "Miss, are you planning to fire Hannah? Do you need me to take a few people to apprehend her?" She turned and said, "No, I have to meet my stepmother first. Let her tell me what Hannah reported that day." At the edge of the forest, Charles's warhorse galloped swiftly along the road. Suddenly, someone chased after him and called out, "Your Grace." Charles glanced at the man and said, "What is it? Speak." He reported, "I received news that as soon as you left Count Calirus' mansion, His Majesty immediately summoned Miss Natalie to the palace." Charles was stunned for a moment, as if he didn't understand what was happening. After a few seconds, he came to his senses, pulled hard on the reins to stop the horse. Then turned and instructed the others, "You continue on your way. I'll return to the capital and catch up quickly." His subordinate warned him anxiously, "Your Grace, although this won't delay our journey to Roger County, if you return now, His Majesty might see it as disloyalty." "Are you sure you want to go back?" Despite the subordinate's dissuasion, Charles replied resolutely, "I underestimated his cruelty before, which led to many innocent people being implicated because of me. Now, no matter what, I must prevent such things from happening again. Regardless of whether the target is Natalie or any other lady." Faced with Charles's stubbornness, the man continued to worry for his safety. But suddenly, a pigeon arrived. The subordinate reported, "Your Grace, please wait a moment. There's new information from the royal capital." Charles immediately urged, "Open it and see." He took the letter from the pigeon's leg. After reading the contents, he said, "You don't need to return to the royal capital." Hearing this, Charles panicked even more. "What?" His face paled. "No need to return? Does that mean?" He remembered Natalie's last words. "Be safe and return soon." Thousands of negative thoughts flooded Charles's mind. "No." The subordinate said, "Your Grace, look. My people who stayed behind saw Miss Natalie and Count Calirus leaving the palace, completely unharmed." Charles carefully read every word in the letter. After confirming Natalie's safety, he breathed a sigh of relief. Since she has left the palace, she should be safe for the time being. But it's only temporary. I must complete this mission quickly and return. Charles immediately set off resolutely. "Continue on. We must reach Roger County before sunrise tomorrow." A lively tea party was held at Count Calirus' mansion. People of high social standing came to celebrate. Natalie's stepmother sipped her tea leisurely. "I originally planned to use this opportunity to ask who Duke Bennox likes. The result is that no one knows. Duke Bennox is hiding it well." Suddenly, Natalie rushed over, calling her with a panicked expression. "Mother!" She turned around in surprise. "Natalie?" The other ladies present were also curious about her presence. "Who is this?" Natalie quickly gathered her skirt and gently introduced herself. "Natalie Calirus sends her warmest greetings to everyone." Those present smiled with delight, praising her endlessly. "So it's the eldest daughter of Count Calirus. I rarely saw her before. She's unexpectedly beautiful. Her demeanor is also extremely elegant and graceful, a perfect model lady." Seeing Natalie being praised so highly, jealousy welled up inside her stepmother. This hateful girl, wasn't she very obedient before? She never attended tea parties like this. Why did she suddenly come today? And she seems particularly dressed up. Is she deliberately trying to steal my attention? She forced a smile and asked Natalie, "Didn't you hate occasions like this? Why did you suddenly come?" Natalie quickly replied, "I don't actually hate them. It's just that mother's health wasn't good before, so I couldn't leave her side. I had to stay home and take care of her. But now it's all right. Your health is fine, so I can go out and socialize." Faced with Natalie's reasonable answer, she could only reply awkwardly, "That's right. I used to be often ill." "You've worked hard." Natalie continued to play the role of the filial daughter to this wicked stepmother. "It wasn't hard work. Taking care of you is what I should do. Besides, I believe that if I encounter any unpleasantness, you will definitely stand up for me." In front of so many people, she could only pretend to care for Natalie. "Does that mean you've encountered something unpleasant? Don't worry, with mother here, no one dares to bully you." Inwardly, Helena had a bad feeling. "I have a feeling this girl isn't up to any good," but in front of so many people, I have to maintain the image of a good stepmother. Natalie suddenly grabbed her hand and, with tears in her eyes, recounted, "It's Chef Hannah. I asked her to make an apple pie, but she used rotten apples, and I even bit into a worm." Her stepmother was extremely surprised. "Is there such a thing?" The surrounding people began to murmur. "Oh my, how terrible. Poor Natalie, bullied by a chef again. Madame Helena must deal with that cook severely. Otherwise, how will she manage the Count's mansion?" Forced into a corner, she could only feign sympathy towards Natalie. "Don't worry, Natalie. After this tea party, I will immediately fire Hannah. I'll make her pay for her stupid behavior." Inwardly, Helena had already recognized Natalie's fabrication. "Without my permission, Hannah definitely wouldn't do such a foolish thing. This hateful girl is lying. I'll temporarily appease her. After the guests leave, it's up to me how to deal with this." Natalie was extremely shrewd. She cried and demanded of her stepmother, "Mother, please order Hannah's dismissal now. I really can't stand it another minute." This was all part of Natalie's plan. How can I let her drag it out until the tea party is over? Only by letting everyone see her being dismissed will they be truly convinced. Everyone began to voice their opinions. "I agree with Miss Natalie's suggestion. This chef should be immediately dismissed from the Count's mansion. And her wages should be deducted as punishment. So she'll remember." That's right, that's right." Seeing everyone agreeing with Natalie, the stepmother's mouth twitched, wanting to scold her, but to maintain her image, she had to reluctantly comply. "All right. I'll listen to Natalie. I'll immediately have someone dismiss Hannah." Natalie clasped her hand, expressing gratitude. "That's wonderful. Thank you, Mother." Outside the mansion, Hannah packed her belongings and left with tears of resentment. She walked, wondering, why did the madam suddenly fire me? "I clearly did everything she said." Suddenly, someone called out, startling her. "Hannah, wait." Seeing Natalie, she felt guilty and immediately asked, "Miss, is something the matter?" Natalie smiled. "Following someone like my stepmother won't have a good ending." She looked at her. "See how easily she dismissed you." Hannah, although extremely worried, pretended ignorance. "I don't understand what you're saying." Seeing this, Natalie could only shake her head in disappointment. "Still not admitting? That's a pity. I know your family is struggling. I was thinking, if you admitted your mistake and corrected it, I would recommend you to work as a cook at my grandmother's house." Hannah was stunned. "Recommend me to work as a cook at Marquis Elliot's house? Are you serious?" Natalie confidently replied, "Of course." She stood frozen for a moment, hesitating. Then, she seriously admitted, "It's true that I accepted benefits from Madame Helena to do some disloyal things to you and the Count. I can tell you the truth about anything you want to know." Natalie smiled with satisfaction, seeing everything going smoothly. "Good. First, I want to know what you reported to my stepmother on the day Duke Bennox came to help me bake." After everything was settled, Bella applauded Natalie's intelligence. "Miss, you are truly amazing. Not only did you make the madam dismiss Hannah herself, but you also easily got Hannah to tell you what you wanted to know." Natalie was still pondering. "I asked, and I got the answers, but..." She recalled her conversation with Hannah. "Actually, that day, there was nothing to report about your conversation with Duke Bennox in the kitchen. But when he left, he muttered to himself about the dessert you made. It looks quite like what that girl made, but what a pity." Bella, standing next to her, was equally anxious. "What a pity what?" Natalie shook her head. "I don't know. He didn't say anything else after that. But I can be sure that the girl he mentioned must be the one young Master Eli talked about, a girl Duke Bennox always holds in his heart. And after my stepmother heard this news, she's preparing to find that girl to deal with me." Bella immediately understood Natalie's meaning. "So, do you want to find that girl first?" Natalie smiled. "Yes, I'm thinking about that too. After all, it's easier to deal with an enemy after understanding them. However, the important thing right now is to decipher the document His Majesty gave me. Let's go to the book market first. I'll ask young Master Eli about Duke Bennox later when I have time." Bella quickly replied, "All right, miss." Over the next 2 days, Natalie visited all the bookstores, big and small. I took Bella all around the book market. The result was not finding the reference book I wanted, but running into Eli. Seeing her, he called out, "Miss Natalie. I didn't expect to see you here. Are you still looking for military-related books?" She smiled sheepishly. "Yes, just browsing." She thought to herself, the fewer people know about deciphering the document for His Majesty, the better. After all, it's classified information. They walked out together, chatting. Natalie curiously asked, "And young Master Eli, why are you here?" He sighed. "I'm looking for books related to musicals, but because I'm not familiar with this place, I haven't made any progress yet." Natalie started to think about something. "Is that so? Then let's make a deal." Eli was stunned, still not understanding what was happening. He looked away in confusion. "A deal? What kind of deal?" Natalie smiled mischievously. "I'm very familiar with this book market. I can help you find the books you're looking for. In exchange, you have to tell me about the girl Duke Bennox always holds in his heart." Eli was stunned by this unexpected offer. After a moment, he replied sadly, "I'm really sorry, but about that girl, I only know that my uncle and she used to know each other. Because of her, my uncle hates all desserts. As for other things, I don't know anything." Natalie felt a little disappointed. "Is that so? It seems Duke Bennox really cherishes that girl. Even his family can't casually know things related to her." Suddenly, Eli smiled encouragingly. "But don't be sad, Miss Natalie. Our family always supports you. And the girl in my uncle's heart has never appeared, and certainly won't appear in the future." Natalie gently replied, thanking him for his comfort. "No matter what, I won't give up on Duke Bennox." She thought to herself, "Anyway, I have no way out now. My only option is to win him over." Having said that, Natalie quickly regained her cheerful mood and said to Eli, "Come on, young master. Although the deal wasn't successful, to thank you for your comfort, I can still lead you to the book you're looking for." Eli followed behind Natalie. "That's great. Please lead the way." With my help, young Master Eli quickly found the book he was looking for. And I happened to get a new clue about deciphering that letter. St. Paul's Cathedral in the Roger district was once a pilgrimage site for the Church of Light. It had the best choir in the entire continent. Those children learned a special kind of writing. People said that singing with this writing would cleanse the soul better. However, a few decades ago, a great fire burned down St. Paul's Cathedral. Now, there is only a desolate ruin left. After obtaining this information, I immediately returned to ask my father's permission, then led a few guards from my mother's house and rushed to the Roger district in the night. If I arrive quickly, I might still be able to visit someone who is on duty there. Early the next morning at the Roger district, inside the barracks, Charles kept thanking everyone for their efforts over the past 2 days. The small rebel groups hiding in Roger have been completely wiped out. However, the investigator has received credible information that the remaining core rebel group is preparing to hold a final meeting here, and then they will scatter and flee. Therefore, we must depart immediately and capture them all before the meeting ends. Seeing his poor complexion, everyone worriedly stood up and asked, "Duke, you haven't rested for days. Why don't you leave this to us?" "Rest assured, we guarantee we will complete the mission without delaying your return to Miss Natalie." Charles glared at them. Both of them laughed awkwardly and stammered, Your subordinate means that we will definitely not let a single one of them escape." Charles sighed and said, "Say less." Immediately afterward, he turned around majestically and ordered everyone, "Let's go." Just as he stepped out of the hut, Charles was utterly astonished to discover the presence of Miss Natalie. She appeared with an extremely elegant beauty. "Your Grace. Finally found you." Offering greetings at this time is a wonderful opportunity to make a good impression. How could I miss it? Upon seeing her, Charles worriedly inquired, "Natalie, what are you doing here?" Natalie rushed forward and unexpectedly embraced him. She looked up directly into his eyes and said sweetly, "It's so good that you're safe and sound." The joy didn't last long before Natalie sadly confided in Charles, "Lord Bennox, please forgive my previous carelessness. Last night, I dreamt that you were injured. I woke up very worried, so I came to find you without thinking. Now that I see you're all right, I'm finally at ease." Charles became extremely bewildered, standing there dumbfounded, thinking to himself, because of a dream? The subordinate standing behind whispered about Natalie, this young lady is both beautiful and deeply affectionate. I hope she can win the heart of his grace. Don't tell me, I feel like his grace's attitude towards her isn't as cold as usual. Right. If it were anyone else, they would have been pushed away long ago. These words reached Charles's ears. He immediately glanced at them with murderous eyes. Seeing that, they could only laugh awkwardly to ease the tension. Your Grace, we'll go catch those people first. We guarantee to complete the mission. Everyone urged each other, hurry, hurry. Charles suddenly recalled what they had just said. Right. If it were anyone else, they would have been pushed away long ago. Charles's hand suddenly reached out. He lightly touched Natalie's small shoulder as if to push her away, but for some reason, he stopped. Then he seriously told her, urgent mission. Let me go. Natalie shyly replied, I'm sorry. Go ahead and do your mission. I'll wait for you here. Charles became unusually silent. He didn't say anything but turned and left. Seeing this, Natalie took the initiative to bid him farewell. Please be careful. I'll always pray for you. So when you return safely. Charles still chose silence, but this time, he secretly smiled. Natalie couldn't help but feel nervous. Was my performance just now not bad? At least this time, he didn't criticize my acting skills as being too poor or anything. It's also possible that he's too tired and lazy to pay attention to me, as he looks like he hasn't slept in 2 days. No matter what, he's extremely dedicated to his work. After Charles left, Natalie turned back and said to her subordinates, let's go to the ruins of the St. Paul's Cathedral. One of them asked in confusion, Miss, didn't you just say you'd wait here for His Grace to return? Natalie calmly said, it's not urgent to wait for him after I finish my business. Actually, I've already thought it over when I arrived. Duke Bennox is busy with official duties and doesn't have time for me. I'll increase his and then secretly go to the cathedral ruins to investigate the documents. 2 birds with 1 stone. That night, in a rather desolate place devoid of any human presence, a slightly ancient and mossy building appeared. Natalie speculated, this must be the ruins of the cathedral. Even though it was burned like this, you can still faintly see its original splendor. It's worthy of being a place in the imperial city. Natalie held the oil lamp in her hand and instructed her 2 subordinates, you 2 stand guard outside. I'll go in by myself. As she walked, she thought, the fewer people who know about the documents, the better. They can guard outside and protect my safety at any time. This place has basically collapsed. Even if there are clues, it's hard to find them. I can only go in and have a look. After just a few steps, Natalie discovered something. She stared at the rubble in front of her. This is. Natalie took a deep breath to gather her courage, then carefully stepped inside. This looks like a prayer room. Compared to other places, this place is relatively well preserved. Maybe there's something useful here. Natalie walked around the room to look around and noticed something strange. She ran closer to take a look and wiped away the dust with her hand. Is this a clue? Suddenly, a hand appeared from nowhere and covered her mouth. Out of sheer panic, Natalie dropped the lamp onto the floor. The mysterious person whispered in her ear as a warning, I know your guards are outside. Don't call them. I won't harm you. Otherwise. Natalie could only nod obediently. So he slowly released his hand, and Natalie quickly backed away to maintain a safe distance. She wondered, I didn't hear his footsteps at all just now. If he wanted to kill me, he wouldn't need to bother with this. He could have just attacked directly. So what he said must be true. It's best I listen to him. Seeing Natalie's tense expression, the mysterious person spoke up to reassure her, don't worry. I did that to you just now because I was afraid you would scream if you suddenly saw me. I don't want many people to see me like this. It would be troublesome. Natalie began to stand silently and speculate, it seems his target isn't me. Moreover, he seems to understand the writing here. This is a rare opportunity. Why not? Natalie seized the opportunity to ask him a few questions. Do you know these words? I'm very interested in them. If you know, I can pay you. He frankly replied, no need for payment. I can tell you. After all, I'm an old acquaintance. Natalie was even more shocked to hear those words. What? An old acquaintance? The mysterious person began to remove his hood and turned to look at Natalie. Her eyes widened in astonishment. Natalie still couldn't believe what was happening before her eyes. Is it you? Why is it you? More than 10 years ago, on a day covered in white snow, the pitiful cries of a little girl calling Mommy came from a moving carriage. It was Natalie, leaning against her father, sobbing because she missed her mother. Count Carlyle tried to comfort his daughter. Natalie, Mother isn't completely gone from us. She's watching over us from heaven. So if you keep crying, Mother will be heartbroken. Natalie innocently asked, Really? Seeing that she had stopped sobbing, Carlyle was overjoyed and said to his daughter, Has Dad ever lied to you? Then I won't cry anymore. I can't let Mother be sad. Natalie quickly wiped her tears. Suddenly, she saw something. Outside, there was the figure of a lonely man sitting there. Seeing this, Natalie called out to the driver and asked him to stop for a moment. As soon as the wheels stopped, little Natalie ran to the white-haired man and greeted him softly. The man looked up in surprise towards the source of the sound. He saw a little girl with tears still in her eyes talking to him. Sir, my mother used to love giving gifts to people, but now she's gone. Can I give you a gift in place of my mother? Just a small token of my heart. Please accept it. Little Natalie said as she offered a few silver coins in her hand. The silver-haired young man was a little embarrassed by this situation. Immediately afterward, he stood up. He sincerely expressed his gratitude to Natalie, then reached out and took the coins, saying something. Now, the face before Natalie's eyes perfectly matched her memory, the same handsome smile as before. But the strange thing was why, after so many years, his face showed no signs of aging, still as young as ever, making Natalie suspicious. Her thoughts were so evident on her face that the silver-haired man spoke up, Are you wondering why I haven't aged? Natalie was surprised. How can this person be as perceptive as Duke Bennox? Reading her thoughts in an instant? The man explained, It's nothing strange. As the most devout follower of the goddess of light, my lifespan is naturally longer than ordinary people. But you? Natalie wondered, What about me? At this moment, he stepped closer to Natalie. You've been reborn, haven't you? The man asked, bluntly. He became even more excited when he saw Natalie's expression. He must have guessed correctly. Unexpectedly, it's true. I never thought the legendary heart fragment of the goddess of light actually existed. Natalie was puzzled. What is he talking about? She suddenly remembered that he had once blessed her, saying, In return, the goddess of light grants you protection and luck. Could it be that thing that made her reborn? Natalie was surprised to realize that it was very likely the small stone she found beautiful and always carried with her. The silver-haired young man hurriedly confirmed Natalie's suspicion, It's that. Tell me quickly, after your rebirth, did you have any special feelings? Where is that fragment? Natalie replied, Actually, I didn't have any special feelings, and the fragment has disappeared somewhere. I don't know where it went. He didn't expect the stone to be gone, but guessed that it had probably merged into Natalie's body. He decided to stay by her side and observe her more closely in the coming time. This made Natalie extremely troubled. Her current situation was already complicated enough. If she kept him by her side, it would probably become even more difficult to handle. Noticing Natalie's attitude, the silver-haired man reassured her, Don't be nervous. I don't want to attract attention. I'll stay where you can't see me. Besides, you like these writings, and I can help you. Since he had said so, Natalie had to trouble him. She thought, Just agree for now. Now is not the right time to refuse. On the contrary, the man was very enthusiastic and even began to interpret the inscriptions there, for Natalie. The first 2 words mean praise, and the ones behind are love and beauty. Natalie pondered, When I came here, I copied the contents of the document in random order for easy comparison. Or should I just show it to him? After all, the time His Majesty has given me isn't much. So she decided to ask him to look at some other words. Of course, it was no problem for him. Taking Natalie's paper, he studied it for a while and immediately recognized that this wasn't the content from the leaked confidential document from the palace. Natalie was even more panicked when she learned that this was a leaked document. On the other side, Charles had led the other knights and captured the escaped man. Someone reported to Charles that a leader had used fire magic to escape and was running southeast. He didn't say much and ordered people to pursue him. Not long after, his subordinates returned and reported to Charles that the rebels' footprints had disappeared near where they were standing. And ahead was the ruins of St. Paul's Cathedral, their former holy ground. He was very likely hiding inside. So Charles didn't hesitate. Even if he had to chop down the ruins of the cathedral, he had to catch the rebel. Back to Natalie's side, she stammered and asked again, I didn't mishear, did I? You just said that the secret letter was leaked from the palace, right? The silver-haired man confirmed, yes. Before coming here, I passed by the capital and accidentally overheard that a letter related to the goddess of light had been leaked from the palace. I tried to investigate any news related to the goddess of light. So I found a way to look at the content they were circulating. Although the words on this paper have been scrambled, it can still be recognized that this is part of the content of that secret letter. Natalie didn't expect that from the moment she received the secret letter, she had fallen into a trap. If the secret letter was leaked, the first person His Majesty would suspect was her. If she hadn't accidentally met this man and learned about this, tomorrow, when she returned to the capital without knowing anything, she would be charged with treason and sentenced to death. And it would even implicate the entire Treacherous family. Natalie guessed that Arya had orchestrated all of this. She knew from the beginning that it wasn't simply about deciphering the document. Arya didn't hesitate to sell out national interests to set this trap. She had truly underestimated her stubbornness and cruelty. Seeing Natalie frozen, the silver-haired man hurriedly called her back to her senses and asked, Why did your face suddenly turn so pale? At that moment, a sound came from outside. Natalie was quite sure there seemed to be a lot of people coming outside, so she told the man to hide quickly. If others saw him, it would be troublesome. But as soon as she turned around, she couldn't see him anywhere. He really ran fast. Natalie also hurried outside to check the situation. Unexpectedly, it was Duke Bennox. Charles, seeing Natalie's guard, wondered why he was here and asked where she was. Immediately after, Natalie also stepped out and greeted Charles. Seeing her inside the cathedral, he panicked and told her to come to him quickly and not stand there. Natalie was puzzled by Charles's reaction. Before Natalie could react, a blade was pressed against her neck. It was the wanted man. He had taken her hostage and threatened her not to move. Charles was extremely worried about Natalie. He urgently summoned magic spells. At this moment, Charles was completely enraged and demanded the rebel release Natalie. He told Charles to stop talking nonsense. Immediately withdraw your magic and let me leave here, or I'll take her down with me. Realizing the unfavorable situation, Charles gritted his teeth and agreed to a deal with him. I can let you go, but you must promise not to harm her when you leave. He triumphantly said, Deal. Charles turned and told everyone to clear a path for him. Everyone quickly moved aside, creating a path for him. The rebel said to Natalie cheerfully, It seems like he cares a lot about you. He's been chasing me for days, but now he agrees to let me go without hesitation. He leisurely walked away, holding Natalie hostage. She was still frightened and didn't dare to move, only sneaking glances at Charles. He had exhausted himself chasing the rebels. If everything fails here, he will definitely be very unwilling, right? Natalie thought, biting her lip. She suddenly stomped hard on the rebel's foot. Just as he cried out in pain, Natalie seized the opportunity to push him away. At this very moment, Charles quickly used magic to attack him. When Natalie turned around in shock, he had already fallen. Charles's hands immediately reached out and gently embraced Natalie, softly asking, Are you all right?